Buenas. Good morning, colleagues. The legislature is back in session, and we are still on second reading, and we are now on resolution number 53-36 COR. I recognize Vice Speaker Tina Rose Muñoz-Barnes.
Hafdej and Manana Sizuas, Madam Speaker, and to my colleagues. Madam Speaker, I move to place Resolution 53-36 COR as amended by the author relative to myself, Tina Rose Muñoz-Barnes, relative to supporting the Republic of China's Taiwan's participation as observer at the World Health Organization's 74th World Health Assembly, again introduced by myself, Tina Rose Muñoz-Barnes, onto the third reading file with the opportunity to briefly speak on it, Madam Speaker.
Yes, please proceed.
Madam Speaker, the past year highlighted Taiwan's commitment to improving the health of the global population. Taiwan's quick response to COVID-19 and willingness to lend support and aid around the world proves that Taiwan needs to be at the health conference like the World Health Assembly. Last year, Madam Speaker, hundreds of countries and parliamentarians stood behind Taiwan to participate at the 2020 World Health Assembly hosted by the World Health Organization. It's unfortunate that Taiwan was still not invited. I sponsored this resolution, Madam Speaker, in support of Taiwan so that every country who has the capabilities to help fight this pandemic is given the opportunity to share their insight with the rest of the world. Taiwan's medical community has aided Guam many times during this pandemic, securing 200,000 masks, 900 pandemic readiness kits, and 4 full body temperature scanners with the assistance of the Taipei Economic and Cultural Office in Guam, which we know as TECO. Furthermore, in January of 2021, with the help of the TECO in Guam and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, flights were chartered with China Airlines as a joint humanitarian and medical mission for about 50 passengers each flight, as well as prior to the pandemic with residents being treated at various hospitals in Taiwan. Additionally, Madam Speaker, Guam maintains referral hospital agreements with hospitals in Taiwan, and Taiwan's medical community assists the medical community on Guam in any way that they can. And with that being said, Madam Speaker, I promise to make this one short. I ask that my colleagues please support this effort with me and give their favorable support on this resolution. Madam Speaker, I did amend this resolution just to update some of the figures and make some technical corrections, and that's why the bill is amended by the author. So at this time, Madam Speaker, before I close, I just would like to proffer an amendment to include my brother, Senator Frank Bloss Jr., who has authored similar resolutions in the past legislatures to be a part of this co-sponsorship.
Okay, on the amendment to include a co-sponsor, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, that motion carries.
Madam Speaker, and thank you again for giving me the opportunity to speak and rise in support of this resolution 53-36 COR. And I also humbly ask my colleagues to please support this effort as they continue to help all those around the world during this pandemic. Sizusun Benedician Sainamasi.
Sainamasi, Senator. Vice Speaker, on the resolution number 53-36 COR, is there any other who would like to be recognized? If not, then Vice Speaker, you may close.
Madam Speaker, and if I may at this time, ask that we move Resolution 53-36 COR into the third reading voting file.
On the motion to move resolution number 53-36 COR as amended by the author to the third reading file, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. We're still in second reading, and we are now on bill number 63-36 LS. I recognize Senator Rigel.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I move that we place Bill number 63-36 LS, an act to, introduced by myself, as well as Vice Speaker Tina Rose Munya-Barnes, an act to amend subsection 68101 of Chapter 68, Title 5, Guam Code Annotated, relative to requiring farmers to be certified as bona fide farmers to sell locally grown produce or aquaculture products, and to suspend or revoke business licenses from companies found in violation.
Senator Rigel, the bill is that you are moving is the bill that was reported out of committee, or are you replacing? Did I hear you say the word replace?
Oh, no.
Okay. Okay, I'm sorry then. I just heard it wrong.
Excuse me, yes.
All right.
I move to place Bill number 63-36 LS
Okay. All right. Please
onto
proceed.
the third reading file and discuss.
Yes, please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Bill 6336 LS is the companion legislation to Bill 62-36 LS, which we passed in a previous session. The idea was that both pieces of legislation would work together to address agricultural theft. The first bill clarified that agricultural theft is a theft of property, but many people were afraid that the first bill wouldn't be enough to prevent theft of produce. So the second bill, or the bill we're discussing today, seeks to prevent stolen produce from being sold by eliminating the market for stolen agricultural products. Now, what this does is it would require that anyone purchasing or selling agricultural products commercially obtain a bona fide farmer certificate from the Department of Agriculture. Now, it's a free certificate, doesn't cost anything. It's just a registry, just to be registered as a bona fide farmer. What that would do is, if this bill is passed into law, it would require that any business purchasing agricultural produce ensure that they're purchasing it from a bona fide farmer. Now, this is important for several reasons. One reason is it would ensure that they're buying it from an actual farmer and not a thief who stole produce from a real farmer. So that's one way of preventing agricultural theft. Right now, from what we've been told from farmers, is that their produce is getting stolen, and it's often getting stolen to be resold somewhere. So this is one way of preventing that. So a thief can't steal a bunch of corn and go try and sell it to a hotel somewhere at cheaper than what corn normally goes for. We've actually heard stories from some farmers who say that they've gone to places like hotels, already had a deal with the hotel saying that they were going to purchase X amount of produce, and as soon as they pulled up, the person told them, "Oh, I'm sorry, someone showed up with the same produce and beat you here, and they're charging way less, way cheaper." And what the indication is from farmers is they believe that's stolen produce. That's how they're able to undercut everyone and come in so cheap, because they didn't spend any money producing the vegetables. They just stole the vegetables, went and sold it cheaper than normal to whoever they could find who would buy it. So this would help to prevent that. In addition to that, this would also help to regulate what is largely fairly unregulated, to be frank. Now, why I'm saying that is because currently you really don't need a business license because agricultural products are exempt from GRT. So anyone, and what's happening right now, quite a few people are doing right now, is they can just grow anything on their land, use whatever kind of pesticides on it. No one knows that they're even a farmer. They're just farming somewhere on some lot of land, bring it to a market somewhere, bring it to a hotel, bring it to a store, and sell their produce. No one knows for sure what kind of chemicals may have been used on that produce. Now, while Guam EPA is required to inspect produce and ensure that they're using the proper chemicals on produce that are allowed by the US EPA and by Guam EPA, the fact is, if Guam EPA doesn't even know you exist as a farmer, how are they even going to begin to inspect you if they have no idea that you're a farmer? You're just some guy with a lot of land somewhere hidden away. You're not on any sort of list. You're just not on the radar. So I think this would help prevent people from flying under the radar. So ultimately, it's not just about preventing agricultural theft. It's also about regulating the industry and ensuring that the produce that people are buying in the stores is safe. There's many other benefits from the bill as well. The bill would also enable the Department of Agriculture to have a robust registry that can help them in turn to look for more federal funding if they have a list and a number of farmers that's accurate. It also helps them to know who's farming so they can assist the farmers. There were some concerns brought up during the public hearing that I'd like to address, and actually I have an amendment I'd like to proffer that I believe addresses most, if not all, of those concerns. And now, my colleagues, if I could draw your attention to FA 63 CER L4 P4, it should be in your drives. This is an amendment to line 4, page 4. Now, one of the concerns brought up during the public hearing was that the bona fide farmer designation, well, really, most of the concerns were a bit unfounded. People were concerned that the bona fide farmer designation would prevent small farmers from partaking in it. People thought that there was some sort of size requirement. There isn't any size requirement, but we wanted to spell it out and make it crystal clear that there is no size requirement. So this amendment includes language in there that makes it clear that there's no size requirement or number of vegetables or fruits as a requirement. Some of the other concerns are that it would somehow exclude some people from participating in the bona fide farmer program because the definition originally said U.S. citizens or permanent resident aliens or someone who's been living here for 5 years. So we added in, to be clear, FAS immigrants because they technically don't fall under the permanent resident alien status. They're in a separate status. So we included them as into the definition as well, just to be sure that we're not leaving anyone out. So with that, I'll go ahead and read the amendment. And it amends the bill to read, if you look down at B, it says bona fide farmer. Well, first we struck out the original definition, and then if you go down to B, the definition bona fide farmer means a person who is registered with the Department of Agriculture, grows for commercial purposes fruits, vegetables, ornamental plants, livestock, aquacultural products, agricultural products, or similar products, and is either a U.S. citizen, a permanent resident alien, a non-immigrant alien admitted into Guam under the Compacts of Free Association between the United States and the Federated States of Micronesia, the Republic of the Marshall Islands, and the Republic of Palau, a resident of Guam for the immediately preceding 5 years, or a corporation or partnership license to do business in Guam. There shall be no requirement on minimum size of farm, acreage, or number of plants needed in order to register with the Department of Agriculture as a bona fide farmer. The Department of Agriculture shall be required to randomly select at least 10% of bona fide farmers as defined in this section per quarter for inspection to ensure that bona fide farmers are compliant with all applicable laws, rules, and regulations. Now, that last part of the amendment that requires the Department of Agriculture to randomly select 10% of the farmers on their list for inspection per quarter. That was a recommendation made by the University of Guam's Cooperative Extension Program. I met with them after the public hearing, and one of the concerns they had is that they wanted to ensure that if there's going to be a bona fide farmer list, that the Department of Agriculture is actively going out and inspecting these farms, so that they don't just have a list that sits there and collects dust somewhere, but that they're actually engaging with the farmers regularly. So we put in this amendment to require that they inspect at least 10% of those on the list quarterly, randomly inspect. Again, these inspections will ensure that they're using the proper pesticides, the proper fertilizers, and everything as per US EPA and Guam EPA regulations. So with that, Madam Speaker, I'd like to proffer this amendment and ask for my colleagues' support on this amendment. Thank you.
On the amendment, Part B on line 4, page 4. Vice Speaker, you are recognized.
Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I just want to share with you and my colleagues that I will rise in support of this amendment. Again, it addresses some of the concerns that were brought up at the public hearing, working closely with the University of Guam and the affiliates that work with the university, and a lot of that was addressed in this amendment. So I hope this helps resolve the concerns that the farmers and the university had as it relates to making sure that all the farmers were included. So I'm going to say I stand and rise in support of this amendment. Sinamasi.
On the amendment, Senator Torres, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. If the author of the amendment will so yield, I noted the changes made, and it does tie in with the recommendations by the University of Guam at the public hearing. The only question I have is, in the amendment, it specifically calls for a bona fide farmer, meaning a person who is registered with the Department of Agriculture, grows for commercial purposes. So is this intended purely to require, I know that it's voluntary also, that people would apply to be a bona fide farmer, but is this intended to cover even the occasional farmer who would be more of a backyard farmer that although not for purely commercial purposes, may on occasion participate in some sort of say, village sales or village fairs where the produce may be displayed and sold. I'm just trying to understand, because in the university's testimony, there were 3 categories of what they thought were bona fide farmers. And so does this contemplate a commercial purpose that is broad that would imply large quantities and a certain threshold of sales, or does this also apply to that occasional farmer who may participate in fairs or village events that includes the sale of his produce from time to time?
Would the sponsor yield to the question?
Yes. Thank you, Madam Speaker. So I guess the short answer is yes. Basically, it's just this would say now that anyone who sells produce has to be registered as a bona fide farmer. So that includes sort of the backyard farmers, small-time gardeners. If they want to sell their produce at any time, they just need to sign up as a bona fide a farmer. And again, the primary purpose of this is to ensure that there's some sort of regulation, that whoever's selling produce, I mean, these are things that we eat. You know, if people are going to sell things that we eat, we want to make sure that what they're selling is safe for consumption. And this is one way of ensuring that, is that if they're on this bona fide farmer registry, Department of Agriculture has the list. They can share that list with the Guam EPA as well. The Department of Agriculture themselves go out to the fields and take a look at the bona fide farmers and see what kind of pesticides they're using, because that's one of the big concerns is pesticide use, as there have been reports in the past of illegal pesticides being used in certain areas. So this is just a way to ensure that the food we're eating has some sort of regulation over it. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Torres.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. Yes, and that addresses what the University of Guam was referring to when they made recommendations for developing criteria for essentially 3 levels of farmers: the subsistence farmer, the market gardener, and the commercial farmer. And I thank the author for that explanation, and I rise in support of this amendment because I think that it's important to take into account all the considerations for what a subsistence farmer is, and it essentially addresses all the concerns brought up at the public hearing. So I rise in full support of this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. On the amendment, if anyone else on the amendment, if not, then the sponsor may close on the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I thank my colleagues and the retiring speaker for her support. Again, this amendment just takes into account a lot of the concerns that were brought up during the public hearing. One is that there was concern that this may not encompass all farmers, including small farmers, that it might exclude smaller farmers based on the size of your farm. So this amendment makes it crystal clear that there's no requirement for acreage, no requirement for number of plants or fruits or vegetables, none of those requirements. It also expands the definition to ensure that citizens from the freely associated states are included on the list. And finally, one part that I really like about the amendment is that it adds a requirement that not only does the Department of Agriculture get to have this list, but now they have to inspect 10% quarterly of the people on the list. So it also holds their feet to the fire, so to speak, and ensures that they don't just get a bunch of people on a list, collect their names, and then the list just sits there and they don't do anything with it. This requires them to go out into the fields and actively inspect these farms on a quarterly basis. And again, I think that would go a long way in terms of ensuring the safety of the produce that's being sold on Guam. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. On the bill. Senator Taitugui, you're recognized on the bill. Oh, I'm so sorry. Let's vote on the amendment. So on the amendment, is there any objection to the amendment? Seeing no objection, motion carries. On the bill, Senator Taitigui, you are recognized.
Situs Mase, Madam Speaker, and good morning to my colleagues. And I'd like to thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to comment in support of Bill 63, which seeks to protect the hard work and investment of Guam farmers. Madam Speaker, by requiring individuals to register with the Department of Agriculture as farmers who are involved in the sale of fruits, vegetables, ornamental plants, livestock, agriculture products, and similar products of commercial purposes, Bill 63 is another necessary measure in an effort to support our farmers and reprimand those who chose to operate by a different set of rules. Madam Speaker, it was brought to the attention by the author of this legislation that this is combined with a previous legislation that was passed by this legislature, and it definitely does marry the two together to provide that enforcement. And I don't think there would be an amendment to put it this time, but it's important that these individuals, these people who sell fruits and vegetables who are not farmers, but are sailors at the farmers market or other places on the side of the road that sell these fruits and vegetables and plants, that they have to be able to see if this individual who's selling them the product is a bona fide farmer. So I'm pretty sure, the Director of Department of Agriculture would be able to put that information on the website. Because with a list, and it changes constantly, throughout, you're going to have people adding their name to this bona fide list. And it's important that there is an avenue in which those selling these produce, who are not farmers but are buying from farmers, are able to review that information. And I don't know if we should put this in legislation. I think that the director, who's doing an excellent job at Department of Agriculture, will put that on the website for these individuals to be able to review. So reiterating some of the comments I made during the public hearing on Bill 63, I believe that the bona fide farmers requirements reflect our collective desire to support the expanding farming activities and to recognize the critical role farmers serve in our economic, social development and social development. Madam Speaker, Bill 63 restores dignity to the work of a small but important group of Guamanians who continue to do their part to provide our families with essential food items and other products. Especially at a time when COVID-19 had adversely impacted the regular movement of goods into Guam from external sources. So once again, Madam Speaker, I stand in full support, ask my colleagues to please support this measure that would bring the enforcement, the accountability that's needed, and I hope, Madam Speaker, that the Oversight Chair would also encourage to ensure that these bona fide farmers are listed on the website to make it easier and convenient for other people to review as to who they can purchase these products from. And I also asked the author if he could allow me to be a co-sponsor of this measure, and I greatly appreciate his continued effort into assuring the help, the need that these farmers have been asking for many years. And I think this is a right step in the right direction. Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity.
Thank you, Senator. On the bill, Vice Speaker Muñoz-Barnes, you are recognized.
Situs Masi, Madam Speaker, for allowing me the opportunity to speak and rise in support of this measure, Bill number 63-36 LS. And as I looked at the analysis of the bill and how it intends to create a registry for local farmers and certifies them with the Department of Ag so that they may provide resources and services as well as an oversight to track the agricultural food industry. Literally making farmers certified will help mitigate theft and stolen goods entering the agriculture market It also has provides some teeth into that, Madam Speaker. But one thing I appreciate about being a co-sponsor for this legislation and the good author making me be a part of that was the mere fact that you and I know, Madam Speaker, that compiling of data is everything when we want to get additional resources from the federal government, or any grant that is out there, so that farmers can be successful. And in order for us to do that, if there is anything in application for a grant for anything, asked for is information. And this is one good, positive way of doing that. I know there was concerns about, what if you don't want to be a certified farmer? You know, does that make me a criminal? And I think the answer to that is no. If you don't want to, it just gives that individual, it doesn't give that individual the opportunity to maybe ascertain grants and other opportunities out there. So for me, I personally believe in my heart that having an opportunity to making sure the Department of Agriculture has a fill of all the farmers around the island. And with the amendment that was put into play, Madam Speaker, it gives our community an understanding of all the farmers that are here, you know, and I think it's a good thing. And I say, Madam Speaker, that this bill, again, supports the efforts of all the farmers that are here, and I support the efforts, and I just want to take the time to extend my Sizuas Maasi to the author, who is the Oversight Chair on Agriculture, for giving me the opportunity to be a part of this co-sponsorship. And as I noted earlier, there was some concerns, and I know that the amendment that was done previously that had no objection was inserted into the bill, so it makes it an even stronger bill. And when you have the enforcement and the teeth to it, I think this is a good policy moving forward. So thank you, Madam Speaker. Senator Maasi.
Senator Maasi. On the bill, Senator Duenas, you're recognized.
Sizus Maasi, Madam Speaker, for the ability to rise in full support of Bill 6336. Madam Speaker, in the previous measure that was discussed on this floor, and in watching the public hearing and seeing the farmers that were so passionate about speaking on this issue, there was no question in my mind that they're not only bona fide farmers, but they've been farmers and have been lovers of the land probably since they were born and little children, just running around on Guam and living and enjoying our beautiful environment and our land. You know, Madam Speaker, in a previous measure, we talked about the fact that there may be individuals who actually take produce, you know, because of the fact that they're hungry. And I don't doubt that that happens, Madam Speaker. The one thing I know about Guam, and I still believe it's true, is that our people, if anybody needed something to eat, if anybody needed something from somebody's yard or the like because of hunger, I know that even if they were mamahalaw, the farmers and those who had something to give would give. Maybe they would ask them, could you help me in harvest time? You know, can you help me till the land maybe from time to time? I still believe that that's who we are, Madam Speaker. But this bill is very important. This bill is very important because for some reason, moving from that situation to nowadays, with the unfortunate situation of the drug epidemic that we have, it is not just breaking into cars. It's not just breaking into homes. Sometimes it's taking the goods farm and produce products and things that people produce with the sweat of their brow and their hands. You know, Madam Speaker, sometimes I wish I had that talent. I have difficulty even just growing a doni tree. I love to eat doni. Some of them survive and have survived. Most of the produce I have in my yard is by chance. Random papaya trees, a sour sap that was given to me, some other things that my kids have planted. They're better farmers than myself. But even in the attempt, Madam Speaker, I know how hard it is. Sometimes we take for granted the fact of working the land, and when we go to buy corn from Ernie, or we go to other places to buy things, or we see this beautiful produce at Payless and the other stores. I try to buy local almost every single time if it's available. We take it for granted, but it is difficult, hard work to nurture crops. And I believe that's what this bill is all about. It's making sure that when we go and spend money, because, Madam Speaker, rightly so in a lot of situations because of the cost. I mean, local produce is a touch more expensive sometimes, and most of the times than even produce that comes from off island. But I'd rather buy it because it was grown here. And I want to support our people. The idea that somebody would steal that and take that from somebody is just, it's rotten at its core, Madam Speaker. And so I believe that this bill is really useful. There's other utilities to this bill, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, under the current situation, or the immediate past situation of the Recovery Act, before it was the Recovery Act, the other legislation that was passed by Congress, there was a set-aside, I believe, managed through Department of Agriculture for fishermen. And this was to allow fishermen to be able to get relief from COVID because of the fact that they may have lost the opportunity to fish. They may have not been able to do charters where they still use that fish as part of their, to cover their expenses. And I know a lot of fishermen friends of mine, Madam Speaker, that were able to avail of that program. And it's because they have a catch record at the Fishermen's Co-op. That's what they used as their record to show that they're a fisherman. And to show that they weren't able to fish for a certain period of time. And it really helped a lot of them, Madam Speaker. It really did. It even helped some of the guys who charter and fish. Because nowadays, because of tourism and the like, you cannot. The charters are just not there. And so sometimes if you get a charter here and there, you have catch. But then if you don't have a charter, you're going to go out there and you're going to fish. I'm using this example, Madam Speaker, for the purposes of the record keeping. The Guam Fishermen's Co-op has excellent record keeping, and the Agriculture Department also manages that for fisheries management. In closing, Madam Speaker, bonito pagod na dia, kalantataan magay, no? I believe I'm right to say a little bit rainy. Korehizu komolatsi. Lo tiun ogang storm paresti na rason na besangan. I don't call on inclement weather. But Madam Speaker, you know yourself, because you've sat before these meetings, in the event that we have an overabundance of rain, or God forbid, peril, as in a storm, I won't use the other word, but this is the challenge sometimes when farmers come before us. And for some reason, they got busy, they've lost receipts, they're too busy, working the land and the like. But now we have them on record. And I like the idea of the inspection, quarterly, random, because those farmers who are really just doing this because this is their passion, but this is also their livelihood. They don't mind if you come every day. Bring something with you, maybe. But that also, Madam Speaker, will be the record by which we have no problem with whatever means we have to make them whole And also, Madam Speaker, this may give rise to the discussion that we've been having as well as perhaps the opportunity for insurance. Because it's not random, it's more organized now. You know, me, even myself, Madam Speaker, I tried to work on being organized, but it's tax time, and good thing it was extended because I've got shoe boxes that I have to pull out and put together. I don't blame people, especially when they're really busy and they're just trying to make a livelihood, a living, that they're busy sometimes. But now we got more of a system in place, I think. This is really going to give us a rhythm, I believe, to show our farmers that we want to reward them for their hard work. We want to prevent the possibilities of those who would, take advantage of their labor in such a terrible way, but also give rise to an excellent record-keeping mechanism so that we can continue to shore up their efforts. Also, there is the issue of invasive species that they deal with, Madam Speaker. So maybe they record their losses a little bit more accurately here. And as I said, there's so many things we can do. I think this is a great start of something that's going to be really, really good for showing our farmers we support them. We got law enforcement behind their side, at their back now for enforcement of something like this. We have the opportunity to show our gratitude. Pues, si Jesús masi, Madam Speaker, lo que para esta oportunidad, the support esta na magahit na mas importante na klase in lai. Si Jesús masi talo.
Si Jesús masi. On the bill, Senator Brown, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I certainly rise in support of Bill 6336. Primarily because of the benefits that I see to the farming community. I know a lot of these issues have risen as a result of unfortunate incidences where farmers have had their crops stolen. I know most of us remember not too long ago, just a couple months ago, when farmer Ernie Wistig had a substantial amount of his corn crop that was stolen. I've had the opportunity to work with Farmer Wistig, as I have with a number of our farmers on Guam, and I spent 4 years up at the University of Guam working with soil and water conservation. And some of the challenges certainly farmers face is not only the theft of their crops, but also, if you recall, as was mentioned by some of my colleagues a few years ago, when we had produce that was contaminated with illegal pesticides. And the challenge the government of Guam and public health had in trying to track down where the source of this food, these fruits and vegetables were coming from. And so certainly there are a lot of benefits that are added to this. It puts in an additional safety measure for our community, so we actually do know where the source of our food is coming from. Certainly protective measures so that someone who is not a bona fide farmer is not putting fruits and vegetables on the market that they perhaps did not grow or did not legitimately get from a bona fide farmer, because we do have members of our community that purchase the fruits and vegetables from our farmers and then do the marketing for them. They might be the ones that go up to the farmers market on the weekends and actually sell on behalf of the farmers. Most of them who might just be interested in growing their crops but not necessarily marketing their crops. And so it gives them an opportunity to do that, to ensure that there's a legitimate custody, shall we say, of these goods from the source of where they're from to where they actually end up on the table here of our people. Other benefits that I see as a result of this, and there are benefits farmers do have, and one is also, and a challenge that we had during that time, is getting farmers to be registered so they could take advantage of agricultural water rates. Most farmers do that, of course, particularly those on a large scale. You have those also that might just be backyard farmers that have a small area that they grow their crops in. And then certainly there's a benefit to that. You have others who perhaps don't want to become bona fide farmers, but may simply be growing crops for their own consumption or the consumption of their family. If they're not selling it, then they're not going to be required to be registered. But other benefits that farmers will receive, and for those that are well aware, is the opportunity for federal grants that are available. And certainly our Natural Resource Conservation Service, more easily known and remembered as NRCS, provides a lot of opportunity to bona fide farmers here on Guam to do conservation farming, where they actually compensate farmers for doing conservation farming, so that can be an additional financial benefit to supplement other income for the work that they do. In addition to that, of course, we have the Farm Servicing Agency that also provides insurance, so that in the event of natural disasters or other calamities, registered farmers that are signed up with FSA are able to receive compensation in the event of a storm or something of that nature where they end up losing their crops, particularly something they've worked very hard to grow. So there's benefits with that as well. But again, more importantly, we have a chain of custody. We know where our food is coming from. And then even beyond that, most people look at federal money coming into Guam. And certainly Department of Defense is highly funded in the federal government, but not too far behind is U.S. Department of Agriculture. And we have not maximized the opportunity on Guam to take advantage of all those grants that are available. And certainly having the numbers, having larger numbers, being able to identify who our farmers are here on the island, those are all benefits that can be credit to our island in terms of federal grants and other opportunities that are available for our local farmers. So there's tremendous pluses with this. Certainly the challenge is always going to be there to enforce. But I think overall our farming community, while I've actually had a few calls of farmers who don't want to be registered. It's just the idea of the government once again, imposing another layer of burden on them as they view it. But I think overall, in spite of that, I think we have so much more to gain by having our bona fide farmers registered. It provides that opportunity, more importantly, more than anything else of all the other benefits, is simply knowing where our food source is coming from and making sure our food source is safe. Because we still have the challenges as well of illegal pesticides and insecticides coming into Guam. That's still a challenge, particularly from Asia. And if crops are not properly grown and these pesticides are not properly applied, and the timing is not there for when these crops are harvested and put on our table, those are all issues of concern, so that we have those safety measures put in place, so that we ensure we have quality food. Because I'm sure given the choice, we all prefer to have fresh vegetables and fresh fruits that are available for our consumption. So I certainly rise in support of this bill. I look forward to seeing it implemented, and I think there are going to be a lot of issues that will be addressed as a result of having these safety measures in place. So thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to comment on this bill.
Thank you, Senator. On the bill, Senator Perez, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I rise in support of this bill, and for many of the reasons that my colleagues have mentioned, to ensure that farmers and their produce is protected, and the safety of our people when it comes to eating local produce. And I also want to reinforce another point that was mentioned by my colleagues as well, is that this is a good way to build our food security. And so during COVID time, I had a chance to speak with the cooperative, the Farmers Cooperative, and their mission was to be able to organize the farmers so that they're growing the produce not in duplication of others, and that way that we can ensure that what we need is being produced. And I think it also helps to build resiliency in our community. Having that sort of coordination within our community, we can get to food security quicker. And during the pandemic, we were pretty much at risk. Many of the farmers' produce were not being purchased by many of the hotels that have shut down. And it took a lot of efforts behind the scenes to ensure that the farmers were continually farming, by community groups, by members in the government. And if we have this information to be so critical, if we know who's growing what out there, we can ensure that we have a continuous supply of food for our people, no matter what time and what circumstances we face. And so in addition to, supporting the farmers and ensuring that their crops are being protected and the health of our communities protected, we're also building resiliency. So I rise in full support. Situas Masi.
Situas Masi, is there anyone else who'd like to speak on the bill? Senator Torres, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in full support of this bill. I think what is important right now is during this COVID era, we've seen a lot of interest in agricultural development, with the even starting with the backyard farmer. So in essence, it brings us back to a sustainable framework that a lot of people have been discussing is important for Guam moving forward to become a little more sustainable and to take advantage of all that we have with our year-round good climate. But most importantly, I think the legislative findings and intent captures what is so important about this piece of legislature, that by having a robust registry of local farmers, we can give the Department of Ag the best opportunity to provide these producers with the resources they need. One way is by mandating the registry of farmers, we ensure the best chance of matching local government agencies to the producers they need, and also allowing the government to take advantage of other programs that are available for farmers. So the greater the registry, the greater the outreach can be. But I think what was discussed also at the public hearing too is the importance of not only growing a robust registry and growing a robust agricultural industry at all levels on Guam, but ensuring that these local products can now be more marketable and be also something that our local government and our Department of Education can start to avail itself, because the supply and demand has to be there for the local farmers. And that was one thing that I appreciated during the public hearing, was understanding that, you know, it's not enough to do this. We have to make sure that the produce is actually sold and bought locally and promoted locally, not only in the hotel and restaurant industry, but amongst the local community, and more importantly by agencies as large as the Department of Education that pre-COVID, you know, fed our kids regularly in the cafeteria system. So I rise in full support, and I hope that this is the first measure that we take as an island in honing in on what we can do for ourselves for sustainability, and understanding the importance of not only safeguarding our produce against theft, but ensuring that the produce is at the highest standard when it comes to safety, the use of pesticides, and also, you know, awareness of the nutritional value and the importance of having local produce in our everyday diets. So I thank the author for working on these measures, because what we have to be more cognizant of going forward is what can we as an island do for ourselves, from a backyard framework all the way to a more commercial opportunity. But it is the first step in ensuring that at least certain safeguards and certain registries are in place, so that we all know who's involved and that everybody can conform to what is safe and also ethical in terms of the produce that is sold, that it rightfully belongs to the person who is selling it, and that the right people are profiting from it. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're very welcome, Senator Mary Torres. On the main motion, I will acknowledge Speaker Therese. On the main motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in support of the bill. The bill intends to curtail theft and subsequent sale of produce or farm products by penalizing any purchaser who purchases from other than a bona fide farmer. And so, of course, the intent is perfect. It's great. But there are other benefits as well in keeping this list of bona fide farmers, which include continuing to cover farmers for existing programs, including agricultural water rates, compensating farmers for crop damages. These might all have their own separate rules, but this would help to ensure that farmers are notified and can avail of all of these programs. This bill will also help the CLTC, the Chamorro Land Trust, in enforcing its programs and ensuring that it has bona fide farmers on its properties. And that they follow, again, maybe some separate rules that CLTC also imposes. But it helps them to track these people and, helps to enforce. The other thing that it helps Guam EPA, of course, to know where the sellers are or who the sellers are, and to make sure that they have all been caught up on pesticide laws so that our produce is safe. I think that's a very big concern. And right now, all of these are operating independently, but I think working together will continue to benefit each one of them in their separate responsibilities. I'm not sure if I mentioned that also they would be eligible for crop damages, or they are currently eligible for crop damages. I think I did, that would help them. My concern with the bill, I do have a couple concerns. So it's that we're not penalizing necessarily the person who stole the produce. We are purporting to, the bill will penalize a purchaser. And this was brought to our attention by the University of Guam, the experts there who are working with all these farmers for many, many years. And they are very afraid that this is going to make purchasers who they've worked for years, farmers and university and Department of Ag, they've all worked together, farmers co-op, to get these purchasers to have faith in our farmers and to get regular with them in purchasing, that it might discourage these purchasers, that it might become a hassle for them, that the liability is on them, and that we might lose some purchasers who think it is a bigger hassle to get the proof of a bona fide farmer than just to purchase the products. The bill, in subsection A, it says, any eating, drinking, or food establishments found purchasing. Now, it doesn't, eating, drinking, or food establishments, if they are found purchasing, they would be penalized according to this bill. But it doesn't necessarily include here, and maybe the author will yield, if he would yield, what about selling to hotels, not necessarily the food establishments in the hotel, just generally to the hotels, or roadside stands? Can we sell it, can farmers sell to a roadside stand operator? Can farmers sell to, as a flea market vendor? I don't think they're included here if they are not eating, drinking, or food establishments. And can a farmer sell to his neighbor, right? I guess the concern is, can a thief sell to any of those places, right? And so I guess I wanted to just, if the author would yield, why are we limiting it to eating, drinking, or food establishments? And has this been decided to be, the ones who should be penalized, as opposed to, I think most of the produce that gets sold on Guam is sold at the flea markets. And I was wondering why we're not just requiring bona fide farmer to be, to be the ones who are able to get permits there for sale. Or I don't know, because I think they're selling for other people's produce too. I'm not sure how we're going to stop all these avenues, but I also don't want to stop all these avenues. I don't necessarily want to stop the sale of produce from neighbor to neighbor, or small vendors, very small vendors that are just making enough money. And I know that in Hawaii, they distinguish between those who sell below a certain amount. I think $100 is what UOG said to us, and different things like that. So maybe the author would yield just as to the words eating, drinking, or food establishments.
Thank you, Speaker Terlahi. Senator Clint Regia, would you like to yield to the Speaker's inquiry?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. So eating and drinking establishments refers to any food service establishment, mobile food service establishment, or vending machines. So that's the definition as I understand it, what that extends to.
Yes, if I may just follow up, if there's a reason why we're not including these other places, for example, it's not illegal to sell to a roadside stand. It's not illegal to sell in the flea market. It's not illegal to sell to a hotel or any other business that's not a drinking food
Thank you.
establishment.
Thank you, Speaker Terlai. Senator
Yes,
Clinton, would you like to yield?
Yes, Madam Chair. So food establishment includes every establishment or place which is used or occupied as a baker, confectionery, cannery, dairy, creamery, packing house, grocery, supermarket, meat or poultry market, fruit or vegetable market, delicatessen, beverage plant, slaughterhouse, poultry processing plant, fish processing plant, frozen food processing plant, bottling plant, food refrigeration, locker plant, ice cream or frozen dessert plant, public market, food warehouse, or for the production, processing, manufacture, preparation for sale, canning, bottling, packing, packaging, storage, sale, or distribution of any food. And that's the definition for food establishment.
Okay, well, I heard the words public market in there. If that's correct, then maybe that covers what I'm asking about. I think this might have very much bigger implications than we can foresee at this point, I'm afraid. But I think it's worth a try. If we can try to help the farmers. So a couple other things I just want to point out. It's that. So also in the amended subsection B that we've incorporated in the bill, it says a bona fide farmer means a person who is registered with the Department of Ag and grows for commercial purposes. And commercial purposes, I don't know if that's defined anywhere. I haven't seen it defined anywhere, but commercial purposes, I guess I'm asking, does this cover small sales? I mean, or what if you don't grow it for commercial purposes, but you end up selling it anyways, right?
Yeah.
Is that grown for commercial purposes or just, sold later? I don't know. I guess I'm just curious if this language is going to be good for us, like for commercial purposes.
Thank you, Speaker. I'm going to ask Senator Clinton if he'd like to yield to that and maybe even a further follow-up. Maybe there's something that could be tweaked or amended to be inclusive of the concern. So, Senator Rangel, would you like to yield?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair. My understanding is that commercial purposes should extend to anyone who's selling it. But if you would afford me a minute, I don't have the definition on hand. I can look that up and ensure that that's the proper definition.
You know what? I will allow that moment's recess. We are in a moment's recess. Imina Chuntaisais na Legislature Guahan is back from recess. Speaker Terlaw, you still have the floor.
Yes, I think the sponsor was going to yield to that question.
Senator Clint,
Yes,
I
thank
will
you.
recognize you to yield.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There is a section in the code that sort of addresses it. Subsection 50-102, Chapter 50, Title 10 GCA. Under the Guam Pesticides Act, there is a distinction that any purpose not for personal consumption is commercial purposes. So that's one of the closest things we can find. Also, there's a definition of agriculture. Commodity shall mean any and all plants and animals produced in Guam for commercial purposes, not for personal consumption. So those are the closest definitions I could find of commercial purposes, is anything that's not for personal consumption.
Speaker Terlaw, does that help?
Yes, thank you very much to the sponsor for yielding to my questions. And just to make a few further remarks on the bill, and again, I support the bill, and I support its intent to try to stop theft of, agricultural products and to support these farmers in their endeavors. It was pointed out that the hearing that we still need to do a lot of work together, all of these agencies and the legislature, in ensuring that farmers have a market to sell. One of the suggestions was that we mandate, certain entities to buy local products and things like that, and that we follow up on those types of commitments. But they did also talk about, these farmers, they're competing against imports, which are, I think, very streamlined and convenient for purchasers, and so we just don't want to unfairly make the local farmers have a lesser advantage by creating more obstacles. So I'm just hoping that Department of Ag is going to do their part to really, the bill says minimum of 10%, but to do as many as possible, surveys of these farms, go check them out, really help them out, and give them advice, and make sure that they are practicing safe pesticide use. I know EPA's role is to do that, but I'm sure we can help each other. One of the agencies can be the one to actually hit all these farms on the list. They had talked about different categories in the Hawaii laws where they distinguish between subsistence farmers, market gardeners, and commercial farmers. And so I'm just going to put that on the record again. I know that the sponsor has pointed out in the last question that there may be a distinction between commercial and for personal consumption. So I support that distinction. And I also, support that we have, we've been trying to promote small businesses, like you see it online, they're selling produce online, they're selling, I made, tortillas, anybody want to order tortillas? This kind of thing. We really want to promote this type of business. We have, I know Public Health has come in and said it has to be licensed, it has to be safe, because they want to enforce safety regulations, and food standards. And we want to do the same with pesticides. But I just think if we can at the same time increase our efforts to get these marketing and this established. And I want to thank, I know that the farmers have, when they brought these issues to me, for example, about maybe Chamorro Land Trust lands being subleased to persons not even from Guam, competing now with local farmers with rent-free. Those were some of the issues that were brought to me, so I'm hoping that this bill is going to help to get those enforced. But they also point out that, there are just few markets here, and they want us to establish those kind of mandatory, and I see that in UOG's recommendations as well. But I want to thank, for example, Shauna Guzman at IDI, where she has taken it upon herself to encourage the local farmers to sell their products to them. She's made contracts with a lot of them to bring it in and use those products. So we've seen these products used for the mayor's distributions, we've seen them used for this DOE, but we just have to see a lot more of that, Madam Speaker. So thank you very much, and thanks to the author of this bill.
Sinamasi, Speaker Terlahi. Anyone else on the main motion? Senator Torres.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just wanted to rise to a point of information because we were talking about selling to other types of establishments and, the discussion about what is a food establishment. I just want to point out in 10 Guam Code annotated under Health and Safety, Chapter 24, Food Establishments, it talks about the definitions, and then in Section 24102, the exclusions. So under 24102C, food establishment does not include any establishment including any market, wayside stand, or roadside stand, used exclusively for the sale of fresh, unprocessed fruits, vegetables, nuts, eggs, live poultry, live pigs, or other live animals except dogs and cats, by the original producer thereof in his own property. And then it goes into liquor and stuff. So the idea about selling to certain establishments, there was some concern about, well, what about the roadside stands or the wayside stands? And those are in 24102C part of the exclusion of what is defined as a food establishment. So I just wanted to bring that up in case anyone was interested in looking at it. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Torres, for the point of information. Anyone else on the main motion? I have Senator Jim Moylan and then Senator Frank Blas. Senator Jim Moylan, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you for the author of the bill as well. I do support the bill, and I think it's very helpful. The registry, of course, it's a good idea. I wish we didn't have to mandate it, but obviously it's something that needs to be done. The idea of this helping to prevent agriculture theft, what we've been hearing of how many times this has been happening, is also something that this bill should help to prevent. That the Department of Agriculture also will be able to use this register to identify our local farmers and provide the necessary training and getting more grants. Again, another useful tool for this bill. And that the Department of Agriculture also has the oversight and the regulations about it as well. So all helpful. The bill also has some teeth in it by letting the businesses know that if they are non-compliant, then they shall have a suspension in their business license. So it adds some teeth to the enforcement of this law, if so it becomes law. What I would like to address with the author of the bill, though, is just on the effective date, basically, of this bill. I'm sure many farmers are aware of what's happening, and possibly the business community will understand this bill as time goes on. But the bill has an enactment date effective upon basically the enactment into law. I'm just wondering if there should be some consideration of getting the word out of how helpful this bill would be. How do we get the notices out to, I wish all farmers are aware of it and the businesses are aware of it as well, but usually what happens is when it becomes law is that when people realize what's actually happening. I like to see this bill move forward, and I do support it. I'm just wondering on the education process for the farmers and for the businesses to understand how helpful this will be. So if the author would so yield to explain how we can get the word out on how helpful this bill would be. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Moylan. Senator Clint, would you like to yield to Senator Moylan's inquiry? You are recognized.
Yes, I'm sorry. Could my colleague repeat the question?
Senator Moylan, could you please repeat the question?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'll be happy to. Basically, I do support the bill, and I'm just wondering, of course, we want our community to understand the intent of the bill, and many farmers are aware, but not all farmers, and many businesses will be impacted, and some know of its happening, but some don't. The bill is going to be effective upon enactment. So I'm hoping that our community can have some time maybe to understand by getting out a notice of education, or how will our agencies be able to educate our businesses and the local farmers to let them know that this will be happening, so as we don't have to put in the teeth of this bill and get some business license suspended. So just on the time frame of the bill being enacted. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Senator Rajah.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, essentially it will come down to educating the public about it. And I think there's already been a lot of discussion in the agriculture community about this particular bill. So I think most of the agricultural community is aware of this. Now, as far as other businesses, yeah, that'll come down to the Department of Agriculture and other agencies properly educating everyone about the measure.
Senator Moylan, does that help? Thank you. Senator Frank Blush, you're recognized on the main motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Chair, I support the intent, for the bill. However, in listening intently, and I want to thank the good lady from Zonia for bringing the concern up about basically the distinction with regards to sustenance, backyard farming, commercial farming, that whether or not this bill had an effect on those definitions, and whether we are concerned with whether or not we were excluding, for lack of a better term, a certain classification or a certain group of farmers or potential farmers. While I recognize and I thank the attempt to try to clarify what that definition is through certain by indicating that they're in other sections of the code that do define this, it didn't satisfy my concern, my curiosity as to how it would affect them. And unfortunately, the words that we speak, the testimonies that we give, not just in the public hearing, but on this floor, on many times are not articulated and are not expressed succinctly in the legislation that we pass. And as we've seen on many occasions, we've had to bring in previous bills that were thought to be thoroughly vetted by this body to be amended because the intent of the legislation wasn't truly reflected in the bill and the legislation and the law that was passed. I understand the urgency, if you will, for this measure. I surely do understand the importance. I understand the importance for not just, trying to stem the theft of produce, livestock, and the like. I understand the importance of food security and food safety. I sure, don't want to be subjected or have my family or my friends subjected to produce that was sprayed with insecticide or with products that were unhealthy. And I thank and I appreciate that this piece of legislation will work towards that attempt to ensure that it doesn't happen. But in this process, Madam Speaker, are we also then are we making it now difficult, if not confusing, for those farmers who aren't necessarily commercial, if you will, our primary sustenance farmers, but, have excess. In our language, sobla. Whether or not this affects them. And what then are those hoops that they're going to have to go through just to be able to provide or sell their sobla for, the measly, the $15 or the $20 they could gain from doing that. Through this pandemic, one of the things that I've seen as an uptick, as a rise, is the interest in many people, to farm. And this is just to farm in their backyards, and in some cases in pots, on their porch or on their lanais. And in many cases, a lot of times, they grow more than they can eat. And they want to be able to share this. And I just want to remind, my colleagues that when we're talking about, the sale or, of products, sometimes it's just merely just the transfer. It's just merely providing, tomatoes for cucumbers. That's a transaction. In our statute, unfortunately, that's also considered a sale. So then does that affect that kind of activity? If you take the language of the legislation literally, it does. And if, the common backyard farmer looks at the legislation, they're surely not, they'll stand here, they'll come in here by the dozens and say, we're not commercial farmers. But yet we want to provide this, they're willing to adhere to the law, they're willing to abide to it, but we're not clearly defining it for them. Sure, we defined it on the floor for our edification, but once it leaves this floor and it gets out and it becomes law, it's not there. So, Madam Speaker, at this time, I still mull over, what language is necessary so that it is clearly defined. Let's not just pass legislation because in here we all figure that it's good and we just leave the language the way it is. It needs to be clearly defined. Because as was mentioned in the previous speaker, the good lady from Zonia, it's probably got far more implications than it actually is that we see. And as much as I want to believe too that there, while there is enforcement teeth in this and in the legislation, which I think is good, and I appreciate, in as far as the presentation by the author as to what are some of going to be the requirements, to assure this accountability, ensure that this happens. What then are the fiscal implications to be able to enforce this? And are we going to be able to provide that? Sarge? There. So, I can see that, while there's teeth in it, is there nutrition for the teeth? Again, Madam Speaker, I don't want to stand here, and I'm not standing here in opposition of the intent of the bill. But what I am concerned about is the process by which this bill is going to be implemented and the intentions of it. Are we, by consequentially or collaterally, going to omit the possibility of the participation of your salt-blat farmers? Trifanta Tiltan Maria, who's growing biringenas and sigidizas, that because she has this salt-blat, she has to be registered as a bona fide farmer and she's recognized as a commercial farmer. She may not understand that. And we're not giving her that opportunity in this bill, in this legislation, to provide that definition. So I hope that sometime between addressing my concerns and before this bill is sent down to the third reading, that these issues are addressed. Again, I support the intent. I support I understand the necessity. I see the value in it. But it's not clear. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. On the bill, is there anyone who would like to be recognized on the bill? If not, then the sponsor may close on the bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Again, I ask my colleagues for their support on this measure. And, I'll be frank, when I first heard this measure, the idea was brought to me by the Department of Agriculture. And the first thing I thought, because I'm not a big over-regulation guy, I do believe a lot in the free market, and letting the market dictate things. I don't like over-regulating things because I know it can be onerous to business owners and to anyone trying to make money in the business world. But then I found out that this is largely an unregulated market. And I'm a huge proponent of developing the agricultural industry on Guam. I want to develop and help develop an agricultural industry in Guam, and I want to have a thriving agricultural industry on Guam. But I also want it to be done right. I don't want an agricultural industry where there are agricultural producers flying under the radar, growing and selling produce that could be dangerous to consumers because there's virtually no way of tracking any of them. So that's why I decided that I would go ahead and proffer this bill, as was requested by the Department of Agriculture. One of the first things I asked is I said, is there going to be any charge? Because I don't want to charge people, add another fee. Now farmers got to pay a fee to be a bona fide farmer. I said, I don't want it. They said, no, it's free. It's a free registry. All you have to do is sign up. It's free. So that made me think, okay, so what's wrong with that? We're just asking for a little bit of accountability. If you want to sell something, you got to sign up somewhere to sell it. Every other industry has tons of regulations involved anytime you're selling stuff. If you're a food establishment, you got to meet all these public health inspections, sanitary inspections. food safety classes you have to take. All of these things you have to do. Fire inspections, you name it. If you've got a place of business, there's things you have to abide by. So all this bill really does is just add one simple, free layer of regulation, and that's just sign up to be a bona fide farmer. And then the Department of Agriculture knows you're out there. They can share that information with Guam EPA so that they can go out to the farms and ensure that farmers are using the proper pesticides. I'm the type of person I wish pesticides were illegal. All pesticides. But unfortunately, some pesticides are allowed, and I understand. I've heard from farmers that say it's just impossible to grow certain types of produce without certain types of pesticides. So let's at least regulate the pesticides. And it is regulated by Guam EPA. But how can they regulate and inspect you if they don't know that you even exist? This bona fide farmer registry would ensure that all the proper agencies know that these farmers exist. They know who's a farmer. There won't be the ability of anyone to fly under the radar, especially when it comes to selling food. They're not just selling a knick-knack or something you're going to put on your coffee table. They're selling something that people are eating and ingesting. So you want to be sure that the food that you're eating is safe and is properly regulated. To me, that's the most important thing with this measure. There's many other aspects to it as well. Of course, I believe it'll help prevent agricultural theft, which was a big issue that was raised. But I also think it's important to ensure that it improves upon our food safety as we develop and grow an agricultural industry, to ensure that it's a safe and regulated industry. And with that, I have one final question to pose to my colleagues and ask them to ponder this question before they choose to vote on the measure. There are some people who came out against the bill. Now you got to ask yourself, why would anyone be against this bill? Why would someone be against a free registry that costs no money? I understand when businesses come out and say, oh, don't add another layer of beer. Now I got to pay this fee. You're adding to my costs. There's no cost involved here. Why would anyone want people who produce food to fly under the radar? That's the question I pose to my colleagues, and I ask them to ponder that before they vote on this measure. And with that, I'd like to ask my colleagues for their support, and I'd like to make a motion to add a few co-sponsors who have requested to be co-sponsors. So I motion to add Senators Tello Taitigui, Chris Duenas, and Jim Moylan as co-sponsors.
On the motion to add co-sponsors, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And with that, again, I ask my colleagues for their support. I appreciate all the comments and the discussion today, and I move that we place the bill into the third reading file.
On the motion to place Bill number 63-36 LS COR. Sorry. Bill number 63-36 LS on the third reading file. Is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. Senator Perez, you are recognized.
This is Masi, Madam Speaker. Notwithstanding the House rules, I move to go back to motions.
There's a motion notwithstanding the House rules to go back to motions. Is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. We are in motions. Senator Perez, you are recognized.
Tadeusz Masi, from the Committee on Environment, Revenue and Taxation, Labor, Procurement, Statistics, and Research and Planning, I move to place the nomination of Richard T. Gutierrez to serve on the Real Estate Commission and as a member, General Public Representative, on the session agenda.
On that motion to place the nomination of Richard T. Gutierrez on the agenda, is there any objection? Seeing or hearing no objection, motion carries. Senator Perez, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to place resolution number 55-36 COR. It's relative to reaffirming our human right to safe and clean drinking water, sponsored by myself. Let's see, what else? Co-sponsored by Speaker Teresa Terlahi, Senators Tiliana Cruz Nelson, Senators Clinton E. Rigel, Senators Jose Pito Terlahi, Vice Speaker Tina Rose Munoz-Barnes, and Senator Teloti Taitigui. I move to place that on the session agenda.
On the motion to place resolution number 55-36 COR on the second reading file, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. We're still on motions. If there are no further motions, we are back in second reading. Senator Perez? We're in legislative concurrence. Senator Perez, you are recognized on the nomination.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to place in the voting file from the Committee on Environment, Revenue and Taxation, Labor, Procurement, Statistics, Research and Planning the nomination of Richard T. Gutierrez to serve as a member, General Public Representative to the Guam Real Estate Commission with a recommendation to do confirm.
On the motion to place the nomination in the voting file, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. All right, we're back on second reading now, and Senator Perez, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to place resolution number 55-36 COR as introduced. It's relative to reaffirming our human right to safe drinking and clean water in observance of World Water Day 2021 and recognizing the importance of protecting our Northern Guam lands aquifer and precious water resources and ensuring the health of our people. It's sponsored by myself and co-sponsored by Speaker Teresa Terlahi, Senators Tiliana Cruz Nelson, Clinton E. Rigel, Jose Pito Terlahi, Tina Rose Munoz-Barnes, and Teloti Taitigui. And I move to place it on the third reading file, and I wish to discuss.
Senator, can you please clarify the title? It's been amended, my understanding.
It's as introduced.
All right, if you could give us, we're going to take a 3-minute recess for the clerks to upload this resolution and to ensure that we are all looking at the same version. So 3-minute recess. Thank you. We are back in session on the second reading. Senator Perez, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Resolution 55-36, sponsored by myself, co-sponsored by Speaker Teresa Terlahi, Senator Talina Cruz Nelson, Senator Clint Rigel, Senator Jose Pito Terlahi, Vice Speaker Tina Rosemary Barnes, and Senator Teloti Tatigwe, aims to reaffirm the people of Guam's human right to safe drinking and clean water in observance of World Water Day 2021, and recognizes the importance of protecting our northern Guam lands aquifer and ensuring the health and security of our people. Each year on World Water Day, communities around the world reaffirm their commitment to the right to safe drinking water, which is set out in UN General Assembly Resolution 64292. This resolution on Guam has received resounding community support, and we are grateful to receive testimony from our youth, our mothers, our daughters, our veterans, and so many others who wish to protect our public health and our natural environment. Water is easily taken for granted. For many of Guam residents, when we turn on the tap, we know that water will come out. However, what isn't as readily considered is where our water comes from and how precarious it is. As a community resident, Kyle Helix stated, "Today we have water, but I'm not sure about tomorrow." Our northern Guam lands aquifer is federally classified as a sole source aquifer, provides over 80% of our island's drinking water. The aquifer is delicately maintained by the protection of our limestone forests and other habitats, which are particularly threatened by the Department of Defense's development of the main cantonment and the live fire training range complex, which consists of 5 separate ranges above the aquifer. Meanwhile, the US EPA has determined that these projects will result in substantial deforestation and significant impacts to terrestrial biological resources, which have already experienced a serious decline. Not only does our aquifer face the threat of depletion, but Resolution 55 also elucidates the fact that firing ranges across the United States are known to be contaminated many years afterward, despite remediation efforts. And in particular, Resolution 55 is concerned with the potential contamination from lead and other heavy metals due to 6.7 million rounds of ammunition that will be fired annually for an indefinite period of time. Lead is a toxic substance and was banned from use in the United States since 1986 and here in Guam in 1999. Even with low amounts, it is especially harmful to human health, and even more so to the young children, infants, and fetuses. There is already such a long history of contamination tied to military activity, including the testing of nuclear weapons in the Marshall Islands. Not only were some of the ships used in those tests scrubbed here in our waters, but tens of thousands of people on Guam, our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents, and so forth, were exposed to radioactive fallout. On our island, we are extremely unfortunate in that virtually all of us know someone who has died from cancer. It is one of the leading causes of death in our community, and so much of it is related to military activity. Resolution 55 urges us to prevent the growing threat of contamination to our water supply and protect the public health of our people by truly recognizing the value of water. In doing so, the resolution calls on local, national, international bodies to prevent continued environmental destruction at Tailalo related to the live fire training range complex. In particular, the resolution calls on the United Nations Special Rapporteurs on the rights of indigenous peoples and the right to safe drinking water and sanitation to undertake official visits in Guam related to this matter. Again, I want to thank all my co-sponsors, and I look forward to further discussion with all of you in this extremely pressing issue. But beforehand, I would like to also make some amendments that are also in the folder.
Did you get them? Okay. Please proceed. Are these floor amendments, or?
Yes, there are floor amendments. And
All right,
so,
then we're going to need to take a minute recess. There are no floor amendments loaded.
okay,
1 minute recess.
thanks.
We're back in session. The two floor amendments have been uploaded to the drive. Thank you to the clerks. And Senator Perez, you are recognized.
Sorry, one moment, Madam Speaker. I'm opening it up right now. All right, thank you. So the First Amendment is for line 11, page 3. And so it states, whereas Andersen Air Force Base, which has been in operation as early as 1940 and occupies approximately 20,000 acres of land in which the northern Guam Lands Aquifer is situated under, was, so it strikes out only, added to the EPA's national priorities list of sites given national priority among known releases or threatened releases of hazardous substances, pollutants or contaminants throughout the United States and its territories in October of 1992, and that 3 decades or 30 years have elapsed since the Superfund site determination, which is yet to be fully addressed and cleaned up. And so this particular amendment was suggested by one of the testimony provided from Dr. Kelly Marsh Taitano. And emphasis perhaps should have been added to this to highlight that, we are dealing with a toxic legacy that still is in need of cleaning up. And to add on to, lead and other contaminants coming from the 6.7 million bullets will exacerbate what we currently are experiencing. So thank you.
Thank you. On the amendment, to add the words, and that 3 decades have elapsed since the Superfund site determination, which has yet to be fully addressed and cleaned up. On that amendment, is there anyone who would like to be recognized? Senator Brown, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I do want to raise a point here, and I understand the general amendment that's being made, but and the fact, sure, I'm well aware. I think many of us are well aware that not all of the sites that have been contaminated by the military since World War II, particularly with regards to Andersen Air Force Base, have been cleaned up. But I don't think the amendment recognizes the amount of time, investment, and money that has been put forth by Andersen Air Force Base to address cleanup. The very same thing has happened with regards to the Navy sites. I've served 14 years on the Restoration Advisory Board as a community member representing our island, along with a number of other local citizens that have sat on the Restoration Advisory Board to actually oversee and prioritize and review and inspect site cleanups on Guam from previous military contamination. So while, yes, not all sites have been addressed, I would say a significant amount of these sites have actually been mitigated or contained. So I don't believe that the amendment that's being put forth, I would say, is accurate, even though, yes, we haven't addressed all sites yet, but a significant number of them have been addressed. So I have to raise an objection to the amendment as proposed.
On the amendment, Senator Nelson, you're recognized on the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, although I do concur with what the following speaker said, the amendment specifically states, and that 3 decades, 30 years have lapsed since the Superfund site determination, which has yet to be fully addressed and cleaned up. And so we're talking about the thoroughness and the operation to clean up its entirety. Thank you, Madam Speaker. So I rise in support of this amendment.
Thank you, Senator. On the amendment, no other speakers. Senator Perez, you're recognized to close on the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And yes, I agree. Although work has been done, it's pretty apparent that some of these issues are very difficult to clean up. And I think prevention is always the best course of action when we're dealing with any contamination issues. And we know this is a good policy in general. And I think too, when we talk about the whole process, of the Superfund process, I think in the early stages when contractors are hired, I think there should have been more transparency as to why certain sites were taken off the list. And I think it's important to reevaluate going back into time, whether there are issues that remain that have been perhaps missed the scrutiny on the CERCLA process. So I think it's really ultimately about the health of our people. If there's long-term contamination effects, and keep in mind, Environmental Protection Agency was not created until the 70s. And by that time, many chemicals were used without really knowing the full effects. They were used, they were stored here, and a lot of them are known to be persistent in the environment. And I think it's important to, look at that, the whole picture. We need to reevaluate the past process and whether it's sufficient to protect the health of our people. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. On the amendment, is there an objection? Is there an objection? Okay, so there's an objection. So all in favor of the amendment, please raise your hand. In favor of the amendment, please raise your hand. Amendment fails. Senator Paris, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The second amendment is on line 4, page 4. It states, whereas the authority of federal agencies often supersedes Guam territorial authority, and the government of Guam entities often lack the power, resources, and means to effectively hold Department of Defense responsible due to federal exemptions from the environmental agency regulations. And that specifically for the proposed live fire training ranges, the Department of Defense Supplemental Environmental Impact Statement of 2012 assessed that range operations have the potential to leach munition constituents to the groundwater, and that ranges will likely increase the amount of petroleum, oil, and lubricants, hazardous waste, herbicides, pesticides, and fertilizers being stored, transported, and utilized on the proposed facilities. And so this is actually taken from a quote from the environmental impact statement. There is the acknowledgement that there is a potential to contaminate our aquifer. And so this is basically reinforcing that idea that we need to protect our sole source aquifer, which provides over 80% of our island with drinking water. And we want to ensure that what we're drinking from the tap is safe to drink. Thank you.
On the amendment, Senator Blas, you are recognized on the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, a lot of times when you make amendments to a certain section of a piece of legislation, you got to understand the overriding effect that it has on the entire document. And while I understand the concern with regard to the contamination that could be caused by what this resolution basically addresses is the live firing range. You got to look at this in totality and what it means elsewhere. This basically almost infers that all of that activity happens on the base, that it happens on a military facility, that it's going to happen on the live firing range. When in fact, a lot of that activity also happens in the community on the other side of the fence. And what are we doing to address that? So while I understand what the gist of the resolution is. I can be very wary and be very careful about the language that also says, you know, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And if we're going to blame a lot of this on them, what about us? So be very careful, and I need to be very careful about trying to be very specific about very specific things when that also applies to the other side of the fence. Okay. So, you know, we're going to go down this road about being able to watch every inch and every step of what they're doing, and maybe we should. But if we take a look at it, Madam Speaker, and it also recognizes in the resolution, you know, that we're talking about, what, about 20,000 acres? How many acres of community land, of private sector land, of government of Guam land is on the other side of the fence? And what are we doing to regulate that? And are we ready to be able to answer that question when it's asked of us? Okay, so I guess in caution about what we're doing, about what we want to be able to identify, we got to be very careful that you know, when you point your finger, you know, there's an old saying, you know, be very careful when you're pointing at somebody, because while one finger is pointed at who you're accusing, the three other fingers are pointing back at you. And we're going to do that with this amendment. Okay, so, you know, I caution my colleagues to be very careful. I don't stand here, and I'm not going to say that I'm in full support of wanting to make sure that our aquifers are safe. I'm in full support of that. I also am concerned about the activity. But I also have to be fair. Because we have firing ranges on our side of the fence too. And what are we doing to regulate that? So yes, I'm not saying we cannot. No, let's not protect our water. We have to protect our water. We have to protect our water. But let's also be reasonable about the blames that we're going to be casting. Okay, so thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. On the amendment,
Vice Speaker Nelson, you're recognized on the amendment.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, although I do agree with our colleagues' previous remarks, it's absolutely right. We should be equitable in acknowledging this matter, especially when we're talking about our Northern Lands aquifer. There are firing ranges on Guam in the private sector, or that are utilized for our law enforcement, but not at the capacity of this. Not at the capacity of what is being built, and not at the capacity of what it is intended for. The residents of Guam who would choose to elect to fire on other ranges outside of the fence are not firing crew-served weapons. They're not firing 50 caliber weapons They're not firing 249s in the extent that will be fired on these live firing train ranges over our northern aquifer lens. And this is a primary area where we will conduct training. Military personnel will conduct training. And Madam Speaker, when we propose this resolution, I don't think about the politics of today and how it's going to impact us. What I think about is how are the future generations that are going to leave this island see what we advocate for? And if you look in the outer islands in Micronesia, back into the 70s, they were always defending their culture, they were always defending the land, they were always defending the water. And this is what I feel my duty as a senator is to do. And we absolutely need to look at what we do outside the fence, absolutely. And that's a charge that we need to also be accountable for. But in this amendment, it is quoting the EIS of 2012. And to this date, we are seeing some areas in our programmatic agreements that can be improved. Not that we're against the military counterparts, but in improve the relationship and improve safeguards together as one island, as one Guam. This should be a partnership, and there's a disparity here, I agree to that. But one bite at a time, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
To Smassi, Senator Nelson, Majority Leader. Speaker Terlai, you're recognized on the amendment, but it's proffered by Senator Ferris.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I stand in support of this amendment. And would just, so this amendment is going to point out language that was put into the 2012 Department of Defense Supplemental Environmental Impact Statement. These are their findings that they gave to us in advance of going forward with the project. They did not ask our consent. They just told us what their findings were, and then they made a determination that they were going to move forward anyways, despite what these findings showed. And I don't want to lose sight of the fact, Madam Speaker, that the proportions that they spelled out in their environmental impact study, like the previous speaker said, are far beyond the proportions of any government or private activity on Guam. We're talking about, and I'm reading from page 4, line 8 of the resolution, it says, DOD disclosed 6.7 million rounds of lead ammunition would be expended annually, and that lead and other heavy metals, including nickel, chromium, cadmium, and copper, are known to accumulate in soils at training ranges. This has been proven around the world, Madam Speaker, and that's why they recognized it in their environmental impact studies. And while we have a duty to protect our land and our environment, our oceans, our drinking water, we are trying our best to do that. We have laws in place that restrict activities like this. We have laws in place that run every project through Guam Land Use Commission, run every project through Seashore Protection, run every project through Department of Agriculture. Except for these projects, Madam Speaker, they do not run through our processes. They run through federal processes, and they make their own determinations. So they're very different than comparing what you're going to do at your house or what a private firing range for tourists or locals is going to do versus what it's not a range, it's a range complex. 5 different firing ranges of different capacities, as the prior speaker pointed out. So yes, we are regulating on the other side of the fence, and we need to do a much better job. Of course we do. I think many of us here ran because of that. We recognize that. We want to do that, and we will do that. But we have some very good laws in place that we need to have enforced. But unfortunately, this resolution is talking about areas that we do not control. That's the whole point of the other parts of the resolution that point out that the United Nations says no to this type of activity where you are in a fiduciary duty to, as an administering power, where there are indigenous people, where there are non-self-governing peoples. That's what the rest of this resolution is pointing out. That in many ways, we are talking about a whole different scenario here. You know, it reminds me of years ago, before my days here in the legislature for sure. You know, maybe many of you have seen your families, members. I know that my daughters were asked when they were students at GW to go help plant trees down in Yamatic, because there we are trying to plant trees, conserve, stop the erosion, conserve the corals that are in Seti Bay and Sedza Bay. We're trying to conserve those corals, Madam Speaker, as part of mitigation from the dredging of corals in Apra Harbor. We are still living with the burden of environmental impacts that we were beyond our control, and it is us and our children who are taking care of those things today. And if you see, Department of Ag, I think GWA, they always send out notices. And I totally understand. They're telling us each to do our part in taking care of our waterlands. Don't do this, don't do that, don't do this. But they bulldozed 900 football fields, Madam Speaker. I'm telling you, the proportions are just not comparable. And what really, so I support this amendment because it's putting in their findings. It's putting in there what they said was going to happen to the water and that they decided to go forward anyways. And I think that's very important because, I don't know, I always think about, when I die, what are my kids going to think? Are they going to think that we just let that happen? And I refuse to have them think that. It's why I'm very vocal, and I'm sure some of you are tired of listening to this, but I just refuse to have the record show that we said nothing, and that we said it's okay, it's not okay. And the reason why, despite all their promises of taking care of these areas and that we are going to plant a forest somewhere else to take care of the ones that we have destroyed over the aquifer, it leaves our future generations with a bigger threat, with potentially less resources. And I feel like that is all of our duty here, is to protect these resources for them. Because our economy, Guam, is important. They call us the tip of the spear. I don't think that's as important as we are fresh water source for all commerce in this area, for the military, for the people of Guam. Our water is probably our most precious item that they recognized. It separates us from the other islands. And that's why I just feel like we have to also, make the record show that we were not stupid. We recognized the threat. They told us the threat, thank goodness, that the federal laws require them to at least spell some of these things out. It was for this purpose, so that we can see it and we can say it out loud. And we can inform our community, and we can just do what we can. And what we are asking to do is minor compared to what they are already doing. We're just asking them to reconsider the threat to the aquifer. And I don't think there's anything more important than we can do than that. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're very welcome, Speaker Talai. Senator Chris Duenas on the main motion. I will recognize you.
Sidus Masi, Madam Speaker, I think we're on the amendment, yeah?
We are still on the amendment.
Yes, I have other comments for the main motion, so I'm going to speak to the amendment at this point.
Yes, please proceed.
I'm not going to be popular, Madam Speaker, but that's okay. I'm going to go with what I think, what's in my mind, what's in my heart, and how I feel. I have the greatest and utmost respect for this entire body, but a deep respect as well for the retiring speaker. I have other comments on the main motion, but I'm going to extract one of them here. Madam Speaker, words matter. The words we write matter. The amendment certainly calls for this additional language to be placed in the record. One of the words that matters in my reading of the proposed amendment is the potential. The potential of contamination. Madam Speaker, it's not fun to talk about uncomfortable things. But sometimes it's more uncomfortable to not talk about them. We had the potential, Madam Speaker, for decades. And we didn't just have the potential, we had contamination from the ordered dump. Fortunately now we are in the Supreme Court, and I hope we win that case. To enjoin our national government to recognize that they led the effort in dumping a lot of things into that dump, not a landfill. I think we're going to win. The only reason why our opponents oppose us is because we didn't meet that timeline. But Madam Speaker, it took the hammer of our national government for us to finally build a landfill. We pray that the liners that have been built and the future liners to be built and the mountain that we're going to build in the south, we pray because we know there's a potential there too for leachate. Mr. C and so many people have come before this body and talked about how much they hate the fact that new landfill down there in Luzon is there. But the hammer came down, and we finally relented and answered the hammer, and now we're paying dearly for it. When we win, I hope to God that we have the wisdom to take every penny that we're reimbursed for and put that in a fund to properly manage and properly have probably another way of dealing with our waste in the future, because we have a lot of things coming down. Madam Speaker, I heard the word mitigation. That is one of our favorite terms, and it is the term. Because you either want to mitigate or you want to eliminate. So say it. They're not going to fire biodegradable bullets to train for war, to save lives, to be the nation that we are. Do I want lead in the water for our generations to come? Not no, but hell no. Who's going to drink that water? On base and off base. In one of the latest reports that I read, one of the innovations that's being discussed is how the current field up at Anderson has a state-of-the-art mitigation for all runoff water. That comes off of the runway, because even with a certain level of water in the past that existed, those high-tech aircraft cannot land, so they had to make sure that the runway was mitigated. And they've dealt with that problem. I'm not opposed to saying what we're going to say, Madam Speaker. I just want to say it. If you want to shut it down, shut it down. I don't mind an us versus them when it's a good fight, but I don't want a us versus us. I have some of those other comments contained, and I will make them on the main motion. Like I said, I'm not going to be a popular person, but that's okay. We all have a collective responsibility. We fight to win. We fight to win that last lawsuit. We fight to undo the injustices of the past. But we agree or we disagree on how we feel about the fact that we are in a position where the Department of Defense properties that exist within our island are designed to protect the nation, which includes us. In no way in saying that, Madam Speaker, did I ever say I don't care and not at whatever cost. But darn it, as my good friend from Barragata said, and I will enumerate in the main motion, we got a lot of work to do ourselves. I don't mind putting anything on the record. I don't mind putting our concerns on the record. I don't mind putting a resolution forward. It says the tough things and the things that hurt our feelings and make us feel upset. But let's be true to ourselves. Let's first and foremost make it an us with us, including them. And let's be honest about what we're saying. Mitigate or eliminate. Madam Speaker.
Buen provecho, Senator Dueñas. Anyone else on the on the amendment? Senator Clinton Reggie, I recognize you at this time.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I rise in support of this amendment I understand some of the concerns of previous speakers, but for me, there's really no concern for this particular amendment, considering that all this amendment is doing is adding in words from the Department of Defense's own supplemental environmental impact statement. In other words, we're just including DOD's own findings. This amendment is just lifting specifically verbatim language from DOD's own studies. And their own studies conclude that these firing range operations have the potential to leach munition constituents to the groundwater, and that the ranges will likely increase the amount of petroleum, oil, and lubricants, hazardous waste, herbicides, pesticides, and fertilizers being stored, transported, and utilized on those proposed facilities. These are not our words. We didn't make this up. This is not GovGuam's words. This is not any organization on Guam's words. These are DOD's words, as found in their supplemental environmental impact statement. And I've come to find over the years that every time we refer to DOD's own document, we get a lot of pushback and a lot of flack from people. It seems to me that people just don't want to hear the truth. Again, this is not stuff we've made up. We didn't craft this language. This is straight from a Department of Defense document. So I see nothing wrong in citing findings from a Department of Defense document. With that, Madam Chair, I rise in full support of this amendment. Thank you.
Senator Rajani, anyone else on the amendment? If not, Senator Parrish, you may close.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I do appreciate the support from my colleague, the retiring speakers. And, I think it's even more egregious, for the military to say these things and then move forward with a project that's so harmful. I mean, that speaks volumes. And we talk about overreach and the power of a government that can push forward a project that could be so disastrous. I think I would like to highlight that. And again, this is for our people. The contamination, is not going to just stay on military lands. It could potentially leach into the water resource, and water runs in all directions. And it would impact our people for a long time to come. And we really have to take heart about our water resource. Guam is so fortunate. We have an abundance of water here, and it's only ours. We don't have to fight over a country for the same water resource that other countries are doing. All we have to do is to protect it. That's all we have to do. If it means protecting it from the 6.7 million bullets and everything else that happens over our aquifer, we must do that. And this is one step that we need to do. And it's really for all humanity. It's for our humanity. Let's do as Masi.
Thank you, Senator Parrish. On the Parrish amendment, are there any objections? Are there any objections? Seeing or hearing none. Motion carries. On the main motion, are there anyone else wishing to speak on the main motion? If not, Senator Cristoenius, I will recognize you on the main motion.
Madam Speaker. As I mentioned earlier, one of the issues that was just discussed in the amendment, and the reason why I didn't want to spend the time to object to the amendment is because of what I wanted to discuss here in terms of what I really object to. Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, I rise not particularly against what's in the resolution, but what's not in the resolution. Madam Speaker, I went to look at an affordable housing project that a good friend of mine, an investor, has been trying to help the people of Guam on the Chamorro Land Trust properties. And right next to the very base that we're discussing, the right turn just before the gate, can go on that dirt road, bump your way all the way in, navigate around 4 burned out cars, washing machines, TVs, bags and bags and bags of trash. I didn't even see that in the resolution. Yeah. In the last session, there was a bill that was put back in committee that was designed to eliminate parental subdivisions abilities and others and properties over the northern aquifer, to remove them from the ability to have septic tanks. But the real estate developers and others came out, and other families begging. I watched that hearing, Madam Speaker. Families begging. Our family gave us this property. It's not our fault that the government hasn't put in sewer yet. It's not our fault that under a parental subdivision, so that maybe my father, we're a family of 11, and I don't have to maybe have a half acre in order to be able to put a house. My sister and my brother and our children, they're going to need a roof over their head too. It's not my fault that we don't have wastewater management here yet. Talk about land trusts, giving properties to our people, but yet the requirement is half acre because you have to have a cesspool. Whose responsibility is that? That's ours, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have a question to the author, if she would yield.
State your question, please.
So one of the things the resolution calls for is the United Nations to, I don't know if it's going to be an envoy or just one rapporteur. I didn't have the time, I apologize, to look up what is a rapporteur. But the question I have to the author of the resolution is, what is the rapporteur, and what purpose does the rapporteur serve from the United Nations coming to Guam to?
Thank you, Senator Duenas. Senator Perez, would you like to answer that question?
Yes, I yield to the question, Madam Speaker. So yes, the rapporteur is it's part of the United Nations, and their role is to investigate any kind of issues that may come up with certain entities or jurisdictions. So in this case, since it's a resolution pertaining to water, protecting our human rights to water, which is fundamental to all human rights, it would basically, the resolution would be delivered to the rapporteurs, in addition to the other people on the resolution itself, to call attention to the harm that's going to come to our island. And I think it's important to when we're talking about protecting our environment, transparency is so important. I think this is one of the things that we're fighting against when we're seeking justice, is the lack of transparency and the invisibility of our people, the issues of our people. And I think it's about protecting, what we have left, and seeking aid, seeking assistance in that realm, because we've been at this for many terms. Our people know the details of this project. But I liken it to, say, it's hard to say, like abuse, right? Abuse can happen many, many times, but once somebody sees from the outside that, something of harm is happening, then there is a greater likelihood of it stopping and some sort of intervention. And, really it's about making our people whole. People that have called Guam whole, their home. Ensuring the protection of their health. And it's about bringing visibility and transparency on a bigger scale. Because I think this, we've done all we can here. We need to engage, leaders and decision makers.
Okay. Thank you. Senator Duenas, does that help?
Yes, Madam Speaker, but it actually, the answer compelled me to ask another question.
Please state your question.
So is the rapporteur then, or the delegation, or whatever the United Nations is supposed to be doing on Guam through the rapporteur or delegation, would this be confined to this subject matter, or would it include all of Guam and all of Guam's issues with regard to the potentiality of danger to the aquifer?
Thank you, Senator Duenas. Senator Paris, would you like to answer that question?
Yes, I do yield to the question. So the way the resolution's written, it addresses a specific part of the harm that can come to our aquifer, and in relation to the militarization of the unchecked militarization of our island, and the imbalance, political imbalance, the structural violence that is occurring right now. So I think there definitely needs to be some sort of attention brought to that. So it does, it relates to that.
Thank you, Senator Paris. Senator Duenas, you still have the floor.
So I guess in eliciting the responses to those two questions, it is then what I believed outside of the efforts and most definitely the excellent recognition of, as DOD's comments placed into the record, emphasis on have the potential of. Madam Speaker, and I'm not opposed to this resolution saying this, I just didn't see it say it. But I think from the responses from the author, whom I also have a great degree of respect for and appreciate, this resolution to me basically is more about whether or not we support the military buildup on Guam. Under the auspices of clean water. And the reason why I bring up that very important point, Madam Speaker, is I'm going to make a motion. Because as I said, I think it's important. Words matter. Language matters. This body speaks through not only bills, but the substantive resolutions it passes. And having listened to the arguments on the floor, potentially of the mover, I think that this bill should go back to committee I think we should have a hearing, another hearing, and perhaps a roundtable on a more comprehensive discussion on the resolution to include all of us who want to protect Guam and our aquifer, and also discuss the implications, because to me this resolution has the implications of saying no to the current buildup that we're in. And I think that this deserves more of a discussion than just simply sending this to the third reading at this point to vote on. Because what's come up during this hearing, to me at least as one member of this body, is this is a bigger discussion than just the water issues. This sends a different message. It sends a clear message if it wants to be interpreted by one side or the other. And I think we should speak with clarity. I think we should mean what we say and say what we mean. And I don't think a simple vote at this point, Madam Speaker, is appropriate. I have received the same emails you have received, Madam Speaker, and I have not discounted them. In fact, I'm still reading them. But the implications from the emails that we've gotten from most of the groups that have come in support of this resolution is an implication that is bigger. It is bigger, Madam Speaker. Not only by what's not in this resolution, but what the implications of having the United Nations come to Guam through a special rapporteur to be DOD-centric specific, to cite the comments of potential issues, and to engage in the middle of this buildup, in this discussion that has that implication. I believe that this deserves a bigger conversation, Madam Speaker. And at this point, I move to pace 5536 back in committee, and I would like the body to engage in additional hearings on this resolution. Madam Speaker.
There's been a motion to refer the resolution back to committee. Is there an objection? There is an objection. All those in favor of referring this bill back to committee, please signify by raising your hand. Motion fails. Vice Speaker Nelson?
I believe I still have the floor.
Yes. I do apologize. We usually acknowledge the majority leader once her hand is raised, but I will go ahead and yield for you to finish off, Senator Duenas.
Madam Speaker, thank you for the opportunity to express my concerns on Bill 50, or Resolution 55-36, because I won't want my vote just to go down as a vote. I want to say for that reason alone, not because I don't believe in clean water for generations and the eternity of our people living on this great and beautiful island. And not because I don't believe that there's a heck of a lot more to be done with regard to mitigation and working with our partners in the Department of Defense and all of our federal partners, but for the fact that we can't have a greater discussion on this bill and on this resolution and its implications. I didn't want to just say ahi with just an ahi, but I will be voting ahi on this resolution. Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Duenas. Anyone else on the main motion? If not, Senator Paris, Senator Clint Rangel, you are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in full support of the resolution, and I'd like to thank the author for allowing me the opportunity to be a co-sponsor as well on this resolution. You know, I don't think the resolution is really asking too much. It's really, let's look at it. Let's go to the last page under the results section. What are we resolving here with this resolution? Number one, we're resolving to ask for that United Nations Special Rapporteur on human rights to safe drinking water and sanitation to come to Guam just to visit. Second thing we're resolving is to call upon Guam EPA to uphold its mandate established in 10 GCA Chapter 45. This resolution is calling upon our own local agency, Guam EPA, to do its job. So that's the second major thing that this resolution is resolving to do. Third thing it's resolving is to, again, call upon the local, national, and international communities to stand in solidarity for the Chamorro peoples and the people of Guam's human rights to safe drinking water. We're just calling upon people to stand up for safe drinking water. And then finally, it resolves to, again, call upon DOD to prevent further damage and desecration activities related to the live fire training range complex at Tailalo in order to protect against irreparable harm to Guam's drinking water supply and to the northern Guam Lands aquifer. Again, all we're doing is calling upon DOD to protect the aquifer. Essentially, to me, what this resolution does is call upon DOD and our own local government to abide by the rules. As a matter of fact, if anything, we're calling on the federal government to abide by their own rules. All we're doing is asking the federal government to play by their own set of rules that they've created. These are not even our sets of rules because, obviously, as a territory, we follow the federal government regulations. And all we're asking is if you're going to do things here, build a training range complex, do all these construction activities, we're calling upon you to follow your own rules. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Rangel. Are there anyone else on the main motion? If not, Speaker Therese on the main motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I rise in full support of this resolution. I thank the sponsor for her persistent years of advocacy regarding protection of our northern aquifer and our access to clean water. I was at the public hearing and we heard from a diverse cross-section of our community extremely concerned about the past and the present and the potential future contamination of an aquifer by all parties. And I want to thank all of those who testified passionately at that public hearing. Many of them were very young adults, braver than I was at that age, for sure. They were pleading with us as their leaders to do everything we could to protect our water for future generations. They and their children will be the ones most impacted by potential contamination, just as we are continuing today, and I thank my colleagues who have personally participated in those efforts to clean Guam, to enforce laws, to pass laws, to serve on cleanup commissions, in partnership with the federal government. to call out our own people to comply with consent decrees from the district court regarding contamination of the dump, contamination of waterways, contamination from sewage. We are paying a lot of money, Madam Speaker, to try our best to live up to the standards that federal EPA and other regulatory agencies have pointed out and are enforcing on Guam. And we have put our own standards on ourselves, and we are not perfect by any means. And I don't see any reason why we need to divide our community on an issue that is not before us. Before us right now today is an issue as to water, protection of the aquifer, and things that are on the record, recognized by scientists to be threats to our aquifer. We know, we should know, if we don't know, then we should know, that our island has been contaminated in the past by, of course, the war, probably prior to the war by activity that took place here, after the war in huge amounts. We're paying for that today. Those suffering from illnesses because of this contamination, they paid with that with their lives. My father comes from the 11 siblings. Out of that family, I can only count 4 who did not die of different types of cancer. And I thought that was unique to my father's family, and I wondered, what happened when I was young? But of course, grew to learn that that's happening in every family. And I don't think it's because of spam, Madam Speaker, even though that's what they want to tell us. That's something we can control, but there are so many factors beyond our control. People are living on dump sites. They are living near mustard gas. They are living near radiation deposits. They are living probably near Agent Orange herbicides. I'll take away the probably. It's clear herbicides were used on Guam. I just was able to file an amicus brief in a case on Friday where they're challenging the Veterans Affairs, the Department of Veterans Affairs determination that there will be no presumption that the veterans on Guam during that time period were exposed to Agent Orange, even though all the records show that they were exposed to herbicides. But the Department of Defense continues to deny the use of Agent Orange on Guam, despite the affidavits and everything. But in that case, the point is, attached to that, the brief that was filed was report after report after report of contamination on Guam. It's why we hopefully will win in this ORDOT dump case. It's, and share the liability. And that's all I think this resolution is asking for, is that the things that are beyond our control right now, we are asking for help because we can't control them. Because if they were something we can control, then by all means, let's control it. And I don't know. We've got people, old people, young people, people with disabilities out there trying to help us. And I don't want to divide up our community any more than we need to. Nobody's saying, in this resolution, anything more than what the prior speakers pointed out. And I thank him for that. Very clearly what this resolution does. And if there was any debate on that, it should have been brought up at the public hearing, because we had a public hearing. And all the people were there to testify, and we could have looked them in the face and told them what our problem was with this resolution and resolved it and unite our community. And Madam Speaker, I think about the past. And I don't know. I don't like littering any more than any one of you does, and I don't like the huge amounts of trash on Chamorro Land Trust, and if anybody thinks I like that or is trying to say something like that, of course, I take offense to that. But you know, it's our kids that are cleaning this stuff up. It's our money that's being spent to clean it up. They want to charge everyone on Guam for solid waste trash. And let me tell you, the only issue I have with that is, do you know the poverty rates on Guam? And do you know where these come from? Again, I don't buy that, you know, they're going to tell us, oh, because all the people on Guam are lazy and don't want to work. That's, I got to watch my language here, but no way. That might occur just like it occurs all across the nation and all across the world, but that is not the prevalent cause of poverty on Guam, Madam Speaker. The prevalent cause of poverty on Guam is dislocation, Madam Speaker. They were removed from their land. And we have been trying since the war to get some kind of justice, some kind of catch-up for these people. Our government has been struggling to find ways, creative, I might add. It's our government that adopted the Chamorro Land Trust because of that, in recognition of that. And I don't see why we can't stand with those who came before us, proud to take care of each other, proud to stand up against further land takings. That's the only reason they stopped. Actually, I have to take that back and say they have not stopped, because we are continuing to see it. But that's the only reason why they stopped taking all the recreational beaches, is because finally the fishermen and all the landowners couldn't take it anymore. They were being relocated, divided, put on other people's property to form a life. And I don't know, I just want to say, please, let's not, you know, this is a noble resolution. Let's not use it to divide our community. I think it's time our community stands together, because it's only together that we are going to be successful in this. It's together. Look, we've got all kinds of angles, you know, working. We've got people doing legal work with the United Nations. We've got people going to the United Nations and testifying. We've got people, you know, forming solidarity relationships with other nations so that we can be heard in the United Nations. We've got people going to Congress so that we can be heard. We've had this for decades, Madam Speaker, and we are not done. We cannot be done if they are going to continue to threaten contamination. Because I don't want future generations to move off of Guam because they are afraid of cancer. I don't want them to have to move because, you know, we've got contamination in our waters. And this is a preventative measure. It's saying, let's, everybody, do what we can to stop it now if we can. To stop contamination. That's it. How is that not fair? We can't control your activity. We can't control the land you took. We can't get it back. Can you at least not contaminate it? If we could just stick to those, you know, focus. And try to, I don't know. I would like to focus on those things, Madam Speaker, because just like when we want to criticize the government of Guam, we can stand here for days and criticize the government of Guam, the people of Guam, of all the mistakes that we have made for decades, or we can unite and say, let's do our best now. Let's not pit one against the other. We've got to do it together. And that's really all it takes. It's if all of us together say, no way, don't contaminate, you know, whatever that activity is that causes the highest risk, stop that activity. Or do something different. I can't see how that's unreasonable, and I actually can't see how that's not our duty. I agree with one of the previous speakers that it is very difficult to talk about contamination on Guam. I don't like to bring it up very often, but because it's hard. It's painful, if I might say. Some people talk about decades of trauma. I'm not a psychologist. I don't know anything about that, but I'll tell you, I don't want to put trauma on our Manumku who had to live through all of this, who have to be told they can't use their lands because it's contaminated, or change their activities. I don't want to tell future generations that either, and that's all I'm saying, is we can put on the record a resolution that points that out. How can we not do that? No one wants to believe that contamination exists here on Guam because it's painful. My mom used to say, well, if the government's allowing it, they must have taken care of it. It must be okay. No, I'm sorry, Mom, but no. The government's made up of people like us, and we need to step up, and we need to do better, and we need to protect those who are relying on us, who believe that we are going to protect them. And I thank the sponsor of this resolution, because it's not easy to talk about these things. It's not easy to say, we know there's going to be criticism. But this is a call. It's a call for us to get together. It's a call for us to be conscious in the now. It's a call for us to act, to do whatever we can. I don't know, I have a million things I want to say, but I know I've probably exceeded the time, so I thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank my colleagues for the debate on this bill. I think we will continue to debate, but I think that this resolution should pass because we should not allow any more time to go by without making it very, very clear that we are here to protect our people, we are here to protect their drinking water. Situs Masi, Madam Speaker.
Buen provecho, Speaker Therese Terlahi. Senator Sabina on the closing. Senator Joanne, I apologize. Did you wish to speak on the main motion? On the main resolution, you are recognized. I apologize, Senator Brown. You may proceed.
No problem. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I wanted to read the resolution again because I want to make sure there's no misunderstanding that anyone who doesn't rise in support of this resolution is anti-safe drinking water. And the resolution says, relative to reaffirming our human right to safe drinking and clean water in observance of World Water Day 2021, and recognizing the importance of protecting our Northern Guam lens aquifer and our precious water resource and ensuring the health of our people. Madam Speaker, with regards to this resolution on the title, I don't think there's anyone here that has objection to the title of this resolution. And when I first read it, I thought, great, that's right up my alley. Protecting safe drinking water, it's something I've spent many, many, many years doing. As I mentioned earlier, I spent 14 years as a community member in the Restoration Advisory Board. I don't know if there's anyone else here in this hall that can stand up and say that, who volunteered their time to go and see and address and to attend these late meetings, to keep track of what cleanup work was being done by the military on Guam. I think the challenge of this resolution is really coming to terms with it, because I know I'm very much supportive of protecting our island. It's been a part of my track record. I'd like to think of myself as a proud daughter of Guam. I also come from a military family like many of our people do here. If they themselves have not served in the armed forces of the United States, they have immediate family members who are. There's some that wear the uniform. As I read the resolution, as I read the resolution where I had concerns, as we went from talking about the importance of safe drinking water to what is becoming an interpretation of almost an anti-military resolution. If that was the agenda, then call it what it is, and then we can debate that issue. We always talk about the military, something removed from us. Yet many of us are from military families, if not have served in military families. That doesn't mean we condone the actions that happened after World War II or during World War II. And there's nothing pleasant about war, what the consequences are, what the remnants are that are left of it. Especially the practices that now we come to know were not environmentally friendly. All the illegal dump sites. I've walked those trenches, Madam Speaker, out in the Halamtano and the jungles of northern Guam, where they used to excavate, dig holes in the ground and dump unknown material, unknown chemicals that many, many years later they're having to come back and clean up, if not try to mitigate or remove. I'm not condoning those practices. But when we ourselves as a community do not take the same level of responsibility to address environmental protection, it seems very hypocritical. I was at Guam EPA in 1992 when Andersen Air Force Base was placed on the national priorities listing. We were very much engaged in that process because we knew these sites needed to be addressed and needed to be cleaned up to mitigate not only the previous damage to our northern Guam waterlands and our soils, but the future damage that could occur if these sites were not cleaned up or mitigated. Was it wrong what happened? Yes. But when we ourselves as a community stand here in the body representing our people, and we do so little with the things that are within our grasp to address environmental protection in this community, then we are hypocritical. Because the irony is the Guam Environmental Protection Agency to this day primarily is funded by the federal government. We want to hold Guam EPA accountable to all the laws that we passed. But yet when the time comes to budget for Guam EPA, the facts will continue to show that what is within our grasp here in the Guam Legislature, we do not increase funding. Guam EPA is the size it was 30 years ago. The people that have the expertise are down to 1 or 2 in specialized areas. One we just recently lost that passed away, who's been there for close to 30 years. But we're not tripping over ourselves on the floor of the legislature to address funding, to provide these resources for our very environmental protection agency to go out and not only enforce, but address these concerns. Because the very same contaminants that are going into the ground on the military side are also happening outside the fence. But we're not arguing that on this floor, are we? We want to point the finger, but we don't address our own responsibilities of what's within our grasp to address. I have no problem arguing the importance of safe drinking water. I have no problem acknowledging the history and the sins of the past of the military on Guam. But what we don't acknowledge is what steps have been taken to address those cleanups. What we're not acknowledging in this resolution is what steps we have not taken as a community to address maintaining a safe, clean environment. I don't know anyone who wants to leave their children something less. Who wants any family member, for goodness sakes, to get ill? And are those ills directly related to these contaminants? But I venture to say, Madam Speaker, probably more than anyone else in this session hall, I've spent a lot more time dealing with these issues. Up close and up front. I sponsored the legislation that created the Hydrogeologic Survey, and unfortunately over the years it's been funded less since I left the Guam Legislature. But I wanted to invest to ensure that we had our own homegrown hydrogeologists to have the expertise to address the management of our water resources, to understand and study the profile of our waterlands, so that we can hopefully manage it better and more effectively to ensure the very precious water that we're talking about will be there for generations to come. Because if we don't manage it well, we're going to be in the same situation as many of our residents, what is so easily experienced in the Northern Marianas. So yes, if we want to debate and discuss safe drinking water, let's do that. But if the intent is to put this at the door of our neighbors in the military and claim that they in and of themselves are totally responsible for the degradation of our drinking water because of their presence here, then let's have that debate. But to put that under the guise of, if you don't support this resolution, then you're not pro-Guam. I'm more pro-Guam than I'm pro anything else. But this is not what this resolution represents. And it doesn't put in place also the degradation that our own community, sad to say, some very irresponsible members of our community are contributing to the degradation of our waterlands. And yet, what are we doing? What are we doing as a community to address that from the regulatory side? Almost nothing. Almost nothing. Because I have to say, when the budget bill comes around, I'll tell you, I'm going to be a big advocate for increasing the budget in those areas so that we can show and set the example here that not only are we willing to hold our military neighbors accountable for maintaining a quality environment, that we by all means should be holding ourselves up to the same expectation. Because we've not been doing it. We have not been doing it. We continue to see the degradation that's happening in this community, and we do nothing about it. Because when we're here on the floor of the legislature, when we can be appropriating resources and holding ourselves to the same standard, if not higher, we've not done it. It's unfortunate, you know, the speaker says she didn't want, the previous speaker didn't want to divide. I don't want to divide us either. You know, I attend many of those public hearings. And when I can't attend because I have other obligations, I watch the hearings so that I make sure I understand what was represented by members of our public on any particular issue. And I can say that. Not everybody here can say that. So I think it's safe to say there are a number of us that are very well informed about these issues. We're no less Guamanian or Chamorro or caring of our lineage or our island. But I'd want to have a resolution that reflects exactly what it is. If we want to come out and attack the military on their record, then come out and do that. Call the resolution what it is. Then we can debate that. But if we want to put all the things in this resolution about what they're doing wrong, we didn't put what they're doing right. Nor did we put what we're doing wrong as a community. Because I'm sorry, I don't think the Northern Guam waterlands can designate which contaminant is coming from inside the base or outside the base. I just hate to be hypocritical. That bothers me more than anything else. Especially with regards to this issue, because I've done so much to want to see how we can address and how we can correct and how we can improve. But to come here with this resolution and put all this in and then expect that this is the truth that we're going to tell, be it the United Nations or whoever, we're going to have another outside external interest come in here and tell us what we can or cannot do or how we should do it, when we have the ability here in the hall of this legislature to address our own improvements to our environmental requirements. This action has not happened in isolation of our local community, especially when those of us who have been from the community have served and overseen this process. That opportunity is always there to anyone else here who has an interest in being engaged and involved. Because sitting and criticizing and attacking is very easy. Doing the heavy lifting, there's the challenge. Spending the time and investment, there's the challenge. Making the lifelong commitment, there's the challenge. But this particular resolution, Madam Speaker, as it's written, it just doesn't represent what the title says. And for us to be act because we disagree with the contents of this resolution, that it doesn't match the title, what, we're anti-Guam? We're anti the safe health and welfare of our people? You just can't have it all one way, and it's not possible. I know you're not giving me the peace sign, Madam Speaker, right? Sorry, I was at the tail end of that generation, but...
I apologize, Senator Brown.
No problem.
We would need to reboot real soon. 2 minutes.
I just believe, Madam Speaker, we need to call it for what it is. If we did, then there's another debate and that's another discussion. Because I'm not here to advocate for the military either. I don't wear the uniform. Even though I come from a family that's a military family, like many of our people here on Guam. Like many of our people that have an ID card, that have served or currently serve or probably in the future will serve. That's the concern I had about this resolution. I just think we need to call it for what it is, but I also think we need to stand up and take responsibility ourselves where we can address the improvement of the environment. Because I have to tell you, after this, listening to these passionate comments on the floor, I'm expecting an overwhelming level of support financially for Guam EPA. I'm expecting more money for Department of Agriculture, so that we just don't allow these agencies just to barely get by without giving them the resources that they need to carry out their mandate and all these wonderful laws that we keep piling on top of them that they can't execute because they don't have the resources to do it. Let's put our money where our mouth is. Because right now, it's the federal government that's funding most of the environmental protection that's happening outside the fence on Guam. So I certainly look forward to the budget, Madam Speaker, and I certainly look forward to an overwhelming level of support by my colleagues so that we can also show ourselves as a shining example of environmental protection on this island for our water, for our air. Like we say in Inifresi. We say it every time we start our sessions. Well, let's live it. Let's invest in it. Let's be truthful about it. But if we're just going to point the finger across the fence and say they're responsible for everything that's wrong and not take responsibility ourselves for our own actions and how we as a community, especially the bad sections of our community, they're contributing to this problem, then let's call it for what it is. But I don't see that with regards to this resolution. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Brown. I'm going to allow Senator Paris to close at this time. I'm sorry, Majority Leader, I didn't see your hand up. Please, you are recognized.
Sidas Masi, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise in support of this resolution, and I'd like to thank my colleagues for the debates and the points that were brought up during the resolution, which are all valid. And I humbly support improving the funding source to EPA and join my fellow colleague in leading that charge. 100% behind her. And I think the biggest challenge here in this resolution, Madam Speaker, is because we talk about the reality of the immensity training and the impact of that training that causes the threat to our Northern Lens aquifer. And we only have one aquifer. There's only one aquifer and we can never replace that. And also the challenge is that the enforcement piece for the activities gone beyond the fence, outside of the fence. And Madam Speaker, by no way am I anti-military. As a matter of fact, I think more than any of us here in this hall, I understand the impacts of near-peer competitors and the threats that they pose to our nation and other nations as well. It is essential to have the military to defend us, to defend the island of Guam, but also to defend the interests of the nation that we are the territory of. And the call to the United Nations, Madam Speaker, is not to bring another outside entity to come in and tell us what to do and how to do it. Absolutely not. We're calling to the United Nations, or perhaps people are calling to the United Nations, is because the cry of the people of Guam has not been heard by the United States for years. And we all know that our nation is a superpower. What the challenge here for me, Madam Speaker, is just to make the relationship between the people of Guam and the island of Guam's natural resources equitable and safe. It's not us versus them. It's us working together. And I'll give you a good example. When you have a commander telling the governor, we're not pausing anything. And that happened last term, when we said, wait, can you just pause? We're seeing all these things come about. Can we renegotiate some of these terms? We had a military commander tell us, no, governor, I don't care what you say. I outrank you on your island. We're not going to pause anything. We have a deadline to meet. Hundreds and hundreds of $millions have already been invested. And this is also the crux of the matter, is the impact to our economy. So we're not going to pause. And then we have global powers rising. And so absolutely, we have to understand the importance of the military. We have to understand the importance of soldiers training. That's important. We have to be equipped. We have to train to fight. But we are asking the leaders that are responsible for these plans, for these archaeological designs, for the environmental designs of these plans, of this enormous undertaking of these firing ranges, to do better. I have been to many firing ranges in the States. And in the States, they have their own challenges also with this. But I'll tell you one thing, not many of them are right over the aquifer. Not many of them rely on a single source of water surrounded by thousands of miles of ocean. For me, if I don't say something now, while we can actually do something to mitigate before everything is done and fully completed, while there's time to ask and negotiate, to put better measures into protecting our aquifer, if I don't say something now, it'll be too late to say something later. It's not about being against anyone or being against anything or being against the hundreds of $millions that will impact our economy. It's not about that. It's about protecting the one source that we have. And a colleague previous from Jonia said it. It is our most precious resource. This is what separates us from everyone else in the Pacific. It's about just saying, hey, this is what's happening. We don't agree with it. Let's come back to the table. Can we work together on this? We don't know how much water they're pulling. GWA won't tell us. GWA probably doesn't even know. I hope that in the future we can also look to start monitoring the type of levels in our water, of the different types of chemicals and the levels in our water starting now. So we can see the evolution and the impact of development on our aquifer. And of course, all of it will be in theory, because there's no way, like a previous colleague said, there's no way to say that, oh, this contaminant came from this exact location. But we can track the different types of contaminants that fall into our aquifer system. And if one specific activity is going on here and nowhere else in the northern Guam aquifer lands that is contributed by a certain contaminant, then that theory would be that it came from there. And what is a theory in science? Anything, a fact that has not been proven wrong. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're very welcome, Majority Leader Nelson. Anyone else on the main motion on the resolution? If not, Senator Parrish, you may close.
Suzu's Masi, Madam Speaker. Just a couple quick things that I need to make some corrections. So in the previous floor amendment that was passed, it was FA 55 SFPL 4P4. In it, it says LTFR. It should be LFTR. So I would like to make
On
that
that
correction.
amendment, just to make sure, and maybe even allow Senator Parrish to allow legal to make that technical correction also. So it's LFTR.
Right. Live fire
On that
training.
amendment, are there any objections? Seeing or hearing none, motion carries. Senator Parrish, you still have the floor.
Yes, thank you. And also, Madam Speaker, I'd like to append to the report that we are still receiving many testimonies all in support of this resolution. So I would like to append to the report the following testimonies, and they're all uploaded into the folder. They are written by, so I'll name off the list: Arthur Paulino from the Social Work Student Alliance, Keisha Boroha Kitutu Calvo, Samantha Zamora, Social Work Student Alliance, Marissa Angel, and former Senator Kelly Marsh Taitano, PhD.
On that motion to append those testimonies, is there any objection? Seeing or hearing none, motion carries. Senator Parrish, you still have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker. So there's many comments that were made on the floor, and I just wanted to kind of highlight some of the comments. So, currently the ORDOT dump, right, the lawsuit that is taking place, it's going to cost $160 million. So the cleanup bill is $160 million, which exceeds the combined yearly budget for the Guam Department of Public Health and Social Services, the Police Department, the Fire Department, and Public Works, Solid Waste Authority, and EPA. So really, there is no hypocrisy, as some of my colleagues have stated. Our government agents, they're doing everything they can with all the resources that they have to address illegal dumping and other issues occurring in our jurisdiction. The Department of Defense, by contrast, is a multi-billion federal agency with virtually limitless resources, and the above examples is a lack of the parity. So really, it's truly about holding a system accountable for the poisoning of our people, both who serve in the military and those outside the military. And in hearing all the comments at the public hearing, they were pleading to us to protect something so vital. And that is what this is about. When we're talking about 6.7 million bullets containing lead, we're already dealing with past toxins that have yet to be addressed and fully cleaned up. To me, it's simple. If we were faced with this huge burden, toxic burden, that we can potentially foresee, it's about preventing that, really. We know Kaho'olawe, Pahakalua, Vieques, Okinawa. We know what has happened there. And I believe and trust in the intelligence of our people to say, we do not want this here, and we're going to do everything we can to prevent it. It's all about agency of our people. And that's what this resolution really is about. It's not being victims. It's about protecting ourselves, knowing the full facts about free, informed, and prior consent. Now that we know the impacts that this could have, we have the voice and the power to say no. No to this, because it's going to impact our people. My uncle died of cancer, and I'm really sorry to say that I did not have the opportunity to spend more years with him. And it's really about having that family member there who we love and cherish for many years to come. And that is what we value as a people. It's the Anafa Malik. It's about protecting our people and everyone who calls Guam home. And that is the value that we are codifying with this resolution. We want to ensure the safety and the health of our people to come. And it's about agency. That's what this resolution does. It's promoting that. And that we are intelligent enough and strong enough. Zuzmasi.
On the motion to move, Madam Senator?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move to place Resolution 55-36 COR in the third reading file.
There has been an objection. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. 6, 7, 8. Motion carries. Majority Leader Nelson, you're recognized.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to make a motion that we recess till 10 a.m. tomorrow morning.
On that motion, without any objection, motion carries. We are in recess till 10.